If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Share it with your friends and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every like and subscribe helps the channel grow. My name is Douglas Miller, and I've been a park ranger at Redwood National Park for 15 years, but nothing in all those years prepared me for what happened on June 14th, 1958. That morning started like any other. I woke up at dawn in my cabin, made coffee and got ready for my patrol. My German Shepherd, Rex, was already waiting by the door, tail wagging. He loved our morning walks through the forest. The redwoods were beautiful that day. These trees were so tall that you had to crane your neck just to see their tops. Some of them were over 2,000 years old. They were here long before any of us were born. The morning sun barely made it through their branches, creating little pools of light on the forest floor. I'd always felt at peace among these giants. After coming back from Korea with nightmares that wouldn't go away, these woods saved me. The trees didn't ask questions. They didn't care about the things I'd seen in the war. They just stood there, strong and silent, like they had for centuries. But something felt different that morning. As Rex and I walked deeper into the old-growth section, I noticed the birds had stopped singing. Now, I've been in these woods long enough to know that silence is never good. Birds stop singing for a reason, usually because there's a predator around. The fog was thicker than usual too. In summer, we often get morning fog in the redwoods, but this was different. It clung to everything like a heavy blanket, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Then I smelled it, this strange, sweet smell, like fruit that had gone bad, mixed with something metallic, like copper maybe, or blood. Rex stopped walking. His ears went flat against his head, and he started to whine. In all our years together, I'd never seen him act like this. The temperature dropped suddenly. I could see my breath in the air, which was impossible. It was June in California, but there it was, little clouds of vapor with each exhale. I even noticed frost forming on some fallen logs nearby. That's when I saw the deer. A whole family of them, a doe and 2 fawns, standing perfectly still about 50 yards away. They weren't eating or moving, they were just staring, all 3 of them looking in the same direction, deeper into the woods. I followed their gaze but couldn't see anything through the fog. Then, without warning, all 3 deer bolted. They ran like something was chasing them, though I couldn't see or hear anything. The fog got even thicker after that. The sun should have been burning it off by now, but instead it seemed to be getting worse. I could barely see Rex beside me. I pulled out my compass to check our position. The needle was spinning in circles, which made no sense. I tapped it, shook it, but it kept spinning like we were standing at the North Pole. That's when I noticed the trees. Some of the older redwoods had marks carved into them. Not fresh marks. These looked old, maybe decades old. They were symbols I didn't recognize. The Park Service had always thought they were just vandalism from hikers, but looking at them now, they seemed different, like warnings. Rex growled, low and deep in his throat. He was staring into the fog, his whole body tense. "What is it, boy?" I asked, but I already knew something was very wrong. The silence was complete now. No birds, no wind, not even the usual creaking of tree branches. It was like the whole forest was holding its breath, and that smell was getting stronger, that sick, sweet odor that made my stomach turn. I decided we needed to head back. In my 15 years as a ranger, I'd learned to trust my instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming at me to get out of there. But as I turned to go, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, in the soft earth of the trail, were tracks. But these weren't from any animal I knew. They looked like deer tracks, but they were twice the size they should be. And the spacing was all wrong. Whatever made these tracks walked upright like a human. I knelt down to get a closer look. The tracks were fresh, maybe only minutes old, and they were heading in the same direction we'd been walking, into the deepest, part of the old-growth forest. The part other rangers called the dead zone because so few animals lived there. The part where 3 hikers had gone missing in the last 6 months. I stood up, slowly, my hand instinctively moving to the pistol on my belt. Rex was still growling, his eyes fixed on something in the fog that I couldn't see. I knew I should turn back. I knew I should radio for help. But I also knew those 3 missing hikers were someone's family, someone's children, and if there was any chance they were still out there, still alive, I had to know what was making those tracks. Taking a deep breath, I started walking again, following those impossible footprints deeper into the fog. I didn't know it then, but I was walking straight into a nightmare. The deeper I went into the forest, the more I thought about those missing hikers. Sarah Chen, 23, a college student who loved photography. Mike Torres, 35, an experienced hiker who knew these trails better than most. And Tommy Walsh, just 19 on his first solo camping trip. All 3 had vanished without a trace. I'd been part of every search party. We'd found nothing. No bodies, no camps, no sign of struggle. It was like the forest had just swallowed them. And whole. My supervisors said it was probably bears or mountain lions. Maybe they got lost and fell into a ravine, but I knew better. I'd been keeping my own notes, writing down all the strange things that didn't add up, like how all 3 went missing. In the same area, this exact part of the forest, like how their cameras were found, but all the film was blank. Like how other hikers reported hearing voices in the fog, calling for help. I reached into my jacket pocket and felt the small notebook I always carried. 3 years ago, after Mary died, I started writing everything. And down. It helped me focus, kept the bad memories from the war at bay. Mary. My hand went to the chain around my neck, feeling her wedding ring. The metal was cold against my fingers. "Keep walking, Douglas," I whispered to myself. Her voice seemed to echo in my head. "People need you." The truth was, I threw myself into this job after she died. Cancer took her so fast, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. The forest became my refuge. Out here, I could pretend she was just back at our cabin, waiting for me to come home. Rex whined again, pulling me back to reality. He'd stopped walking completely now, planted firmly in the middle of the trail. "Come on, boy," I said, tugging gently on his collar. But Rex wouldn't budge. In our 12 years together, he'd faced down bears and mountain lions without flinching. Whatever was spooking him now was something different. I looked ahead through the fog and saw it, a backpack lying in the middle of the trail. My heart started beating faster. I recognized that backpack, blue and yellow with a University of Oregon patch, Tommy Walsh's backpack. I approached it slowly, my hand on my gun. The pack was torn open, its contents scattered across the ground. Sleeping bag, water bottles, energy bars, all untouched. But Tommy's journal was there too, pages, ripped out and strewn about like confetti. I picked up one of the pages. Tommy's handwriting was shaky, almost unreadable. Day 3. "Something's following me. I hear it at night, circling my tent. It whispers my name. Mom, if you find this, I'm sorry. I should have listened. The old man at the gas station warned me about this part of the forest. He said something lives here, something hungry." The page ended there, torn halfway through a sentence. My radio crackled with static. I grabbed it quickly. "Base, this is Miller. I found Tommy Walsh's backpack. Over. Static. Base, do you copy? This is Miller. Nothing but static." Then so faint I almost missed it, a whisper. "Douglas." I dropped the radio like it was on fire. That wasn't dispatch. That wasn't anyone from the station. That sounded like Mary's voice. Rex started barking, sharp, aggressive barks I'd only heard him make once before, when we encountered a rabid coyote. He was staring at something behind me. I turned around slowly. At her. First I saw nothing but fog and trees. Then I noticed them. Bones, animal bones, arranged in a perfect circle around one of the ancient redwoods. Deer skulls, rabbit bones, even what looked like a bear's jaw. all clean perfectly white, like they'd been there for years, but I'd walked this trail yesterday. These bones weren't here then. The temperature dropped again. Ice was actually forming on the tree bark now, spreading like frozen fingers across. The wood. My breath came out in thick clouds. Something moved in the corner of my eye, quick, darting between the trees, too fast to be human, too big to be a deer. I drew my pistol. "Forest Service!" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Show yourself." Silence. Then I heard it again, Mary's voice coming from somewhere in the fog. "Douglas. Help me." My blood turned to ice. Mary was dead. I'd held her hand as she took her last breath. I'd watched them lower her casket into the ground. But that voice, it sounded exactly like her. Rex pressed against my leg, growling continuously. Now, I'd never seen him this scared. I made a decision. Whatever was out here, whatever was using my dead wife's voice, I needed to document it. I pulled out my camera and started taking pictures. The bones, the tracks, Tommy's scattered belongings. As I focused the lens, I saw something that made my hands shake. There, carved into the tree inside the bone circle, were more of those strange symbols. But these were different. These were fresh, the wood still bleeding sap, and below them, scratched deep into the bark, were 3 names: Sarah Chen, Mike Torres, Tommy Walsh. My missing hikers. I lowered the camera, my mouth dry with fear. This wasn't random, this wasn't an accident. Something was hunting people in my forest, and now it knew I was here. The fog was so thick now, I could barely see my own feet. It wasn't natural. I'd never seen fog behave like this, even in my 15 years here. It moved like it was alive, creeping between the trees, swallowing everything in its path. Rex suddenly bolted. "Rex, no!" I shouted. But he was already gone, vanished into the white wall ahead. I had no choice. I couldn't leave him out here alone. I ran after him, following his barks, which sounded more and more distant with each step. The fog played tricks with sound. Rex's barking seemed to come from everywhere at once, left, right, behind me. I stopped, trying to get my bearings. My compass was still spinning uselessly. Then the barking stopped. "Rex!" I called out. "Rex, come!" Nothing. My heart was pounding. Now, Rex had been with me through everything. My divorce from my first wife, coming home from Korea, meeting Mary, losing her. He was more than a dog. He was family. I pushed forward through the fog and nearly tripped over something. Looking down, I saw Rex sitting perfectly still, staring at something ahead. "There you are, boy. Don't run off like—" The words died in my throat. We were standing at the edge of a small clearing I'd never seen before. In the center was the biggest redwood I'd ever encountered, easily 20 feet across. But it was what hung from its branches that made my blood freeze. A deer carcass, suspended 15 feet in the air. Not just hanging, it was spread out, each limb tied to a different branch like some kind of sick display. And it was completely drained of blood, not a drop on the ground beneath it. How could something lift a full-grown deer that high? Rex whimpered and pressed against my legs. That's when I heard it, whispering. Not in English, not in any language I recognized. It seemed to come from the fog itself, surrounding us from all directions. I raised my camera with shaking hands and took a picture. Evidence I needed, evidence that I wasn't going crazy. The whispers grew louder. Then clear as day I heard my own name. Douglas Miller. But it wasn't Mary's voice this time, it was mine, my own voice calling to me from somewhere in the fog. "Who's there?" I shouted, drawing my pistol again. "This is the Forest Service, identify yourself." The whispers stopped. Complete silence fell over the clearing. Then I saw it, movement between the trees, something impossibly tall and thin, slipping through the fog like a shadow. I aimed my pistol, but it was already gone. "Douglas Miller," my own voice called again, from a different direction. "Come find me, Douglas." Rex started growling again, deeper this time. The fur on his back stood straight up. The temperature dropped even more. Frost was forming on my beard now, ice crystals crunching under my boots. In the middle of summer, I noticed something else. Claw marks on the nearby trees, deep gouges in the bark, running in perfect parallel lines. They started about 15 feet up and ran down to the ground. What could reach that high? What had claws that big? My radio crackled again. This time I heard fragments of words. Emergency, all units. Missing ranger, Sector 7. Sector 7? That was my sector. They were talking about me. I'd been gone too long. But when I tried to respond, all that came out was static. Something crashed through the brush to my left. I spun around, gun raised, and saw nothing. Just swaying branches and more fog. Another crash, this time to my right. It was circling. Rex's growls turned to snarls. I'd never heard him sound so vicious. "Easy, boy," I said, though my own voice was shaking. "Easy." The fog parted for just a moment, and I finally saw it clearly. It stood between two massive redwoods, at least 9 feet tall. Its body was impossibly thin, like someone had stretched a human form until it was about to snap. Grey, mottled skin, stretched tight over visible bones. Long arms that hung down past its knees, ending in hands with claws like kitchen knives. But it was the head that would haunt my nightmares forever. It looked almost human, but wrong. Sunken eyes that glowed faintly in the fog, a mouth that opened too wide, full of teeth that didn't belong in anything that walked on 2 legs. And growing from its skull, a massive set of antlers like some grotesque crown. Our eyes met for one terrible second. Then it smiled at me, and when it spoke, it used Mary's voice. "I've been waiting for you, Douglas." The creature disappeared back into the fog before I could even scream. Rex went absolutely wild, barking and snarling at the spot where it had stood. I grabbed his collar, my hand shaking so bad I could barely hold on. "We need to go," I said, "now." But as I turned to run, I realized something terrifying. I had no idea which way led back to safety. The fog had completely surrounded us. Every direction looked the same, and somewhere in that white wall, that thing was watching, waiting. When my radio crackled again, it wasn't the dispatcher's voice that came through. It was the sound of someone chewing. I ran. I didn't care which direction anymore. I just ran, pulling Rex along with me, crashing through bushes and leaping over fallen logs. Behind us, I could hear branches snapping, something big moving through the trees. It wasn't running. It was walking. Slow, deliberate steps, like it knew I couldn't escape. "Douglas." Mary's voice drifted through the fog. "Why did you leave me?" I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, trying to block it out. This thing was in my head somehow, pulling out my worst memories, my deepest pain. "You're not her!" I shouted back. "Mary's dead!" Laughter echoed through the trees, not Mary's laugh, something else, something that sounded like breaking glass and grinding stones. Rex suddenly yanked free from my grip and took off into the fog. "Rex!" "No, come back." But he was gone, just like before. I stood there, panting, my heart hammering in my chest. The fog seemed to press in on all sides. And then I heard it, Rex barking frantically, then a high-pitched yelp of pain. Then silence. "Rex?" My voice cracked. "Rex!" Nothing. My hands were shaking as I gripped my pistol tighter. Rex had been with me for 12 years. He'd saved my life more than once. I couldn't leave him. I moved toward where I'd heard the barking, each step. Careful and quiet. The fog began to thin a little, and I found myself in another clearing. Rex was there. He was lying on his side, not moving. "No, no, no." I ran to him, dropped to my knees, but when I touched him, Rex scrambled to his feet perfectly fine. He looked at me with strange, glowing eyes that weren't his. Then he opened his mouth and spoke in Mary's voice. "Got you, Douglas." The real Rex walked behind me. I spun around, and there was my dog, hackles raised, snarling at what? At the other Rex. How could there be two? The fake Rex began to change. Its fur melted away, its body stretched and twisted. In seconds, the creature stood before me again, antlers scraping against low-hanging branches. Your mind is so full of pain, it said, still using Mary's voice. So much guilt, so much hunger for what you've lost. What are you? I managed to ask. I am hunger, it replied. I am the empty belly that can never be filled. Your people call me Wendigo. The name sent chills down my spine. I'd heard stories from the local tribes, legends about a creature born from starvation and cannibalism. A monster that could never eat enough, always hunting, always hungry. The hikers, I said. What did you do to them? The Wendigo's face twisted into something like a smile. They fed me, but their bodies were not enough. I hunger for something more. I hunger for souls weighted with sorrow. Souls like yours. It took a step toward me. The temperature dropped so fast that ice formed on my eyelashes. You carry death inside you, Douglas Miller, from the war, from your wife. You reek of it. You will taste exquisite. I raised my pistol and fired. The bullet hit the creature in the chest. It didn't even flinch. Your weapons cannot hurt me, it said. Then it moved, faster than anything that size should be able to move. 1 second it was 20 feet away. The next, it was right in front of me, one clawed hand around my throat, lifting me off the ground. But I won't kill you quickly, it whispered. First, I'll make you suffer as I have suffered. I'll make you know what true hunger feels like. Its eyes began to glow brighter, and suddenly I felt it, a gnawing, empty pain in my stomach, like I hadn't eaten in weeks, months. The hunger was so intense it made me gasp. Stop, I choked out. Please. This is only the beginning, the Wendigo said. Before I'm done with you, you'll beg to eat your own flesh. You'll understand why I became what I am. The creature threw me aside like a rag doll. I hit a tree hard, pain shooting through my back. Rex ran to my side, barking and snarling at the monster. Run, boy, I wheezed. Get help. But Rex wouldn't leave me, loyal to the end. The Wendigo approached slowly, savoring my fear. Shall I wear her face when I devour you? It asked. Would you like Mary to be the last thing you see? The creature's features began to shift and change. In moments, Mary stood before me, but wrong. Her skin was grey and stretched, her smile too wide, her eyes those glowing pits. Come to me, darling, it said in her voice. Let's be together again. Rage flooded through me. How dare this thing use her face, her voice? I reached into my jacket and pulled out my lighter, the one I used to light campfires for lost hikers, the one Mary had given me for our 5th anniversary. You want to know about hunger? I said, flicking it open. Let me show you something humans learned about hunger a long time ago. I grabbed a fallen branch with dead leaves and lit it on fire. The Wendigo took a step back. You're afraid of fire, I realized. That's why you bring the cold with you, the creature hissed, a sound no human throat could make. The Mary face melted away, revealing the monster beneath. Fire, I said, standing up despite the pain. The first thing humans used to keep monsters like you away. I waved the burning branch. The Wendigo retreated further. You think you know hunger? I continued, advancing now. I've seen real starvation. In the war. I've seen what people do when they're truly desperate. But we survived. We didn't become monsters. The creature snarled, but it kept backing away from the flames. That's the difference between us, I said. Humans face their hunger. We don't let it consume us. Behind the Wendigo, I noticed something, a cliff edge hidden by the fog. If I could just drive it back a few more steps. You want my soul? I shouted, lunging forward with the torch. Come and take it! The Wendigo roared and leaped backward, right over the edge of the cliff. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then I heard claws scraping on rock. It was climbing. Back up, I looked at Rex, then at the burning branch in my hand. Time for the backup plan, boy. I reached into my pack and pulled out my emergency flares, the ones we used for forest fires. If this thing was afraid of a little torch, I lit the first flare and threw it over the cliff. Then another and another. The tea. Wendigo's roars turned to shrieks of pain. The smell of burning flesh filled the air, but I knew it wasn't dead. Not yet. This was just the beginning of our fight. Night was falling fast. The fog turned from white to grey to black, swallowing what little light remained. My flares had bought me time, but not much. From the cliff below, I could hear the Wendigo climbing. Its claws scraped against rock like nails on a chalkboard. It was hurt, but not beaten. "We need shelter," I told Rex. "Somewhere we can defend." That's when I remembered. There was an old hollow redwood about a quarter-mile from here. Rangers called it the cathedral tree because it was big enough to stand in. If I could find it, the forest was pitch black now. I pulled out my flashlight, but the beam barely cut through the darkness. Behind us, the scraping sound stopped. Silence. That was worse than the noise. "It's playing with us," I muttered. Rex growled in agreement, staying close to my side. We moved through the forest as quietly as we could. Every shadow looked like reaching claws. Every branch crack sounded like footsteps. Then I saw it. The cathedral. Tree, its hollow entrance just visible in my flashlight beam. We dove inside. The space was about 8 feet across, with thick bark walls. Not much, but better than being out in the open. I quickly gathered dry wood and kindling from inside the hollow. My hands shook as I built a small fire at the entrance. The Wendigo had shown its weakness. Now I'd use it. Flames flickered to life just as the temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the inside of the tree. My breath came out in huge clouds. It was here. Douglas. Mary's voice drifted through the darkness. "I'm cold. So cold. Won't you help me?" I gritted my teeth and fed more wood to the fire. Not this time. Monster. The Wendigo appeared at the edge of the firelight. It looked different now. Burned, angry. Parts of its grey skin were charred black. One of its antlers was broken. "You think fire will save you?" It snarled, dropping the Mary voice. Its real voice was like wind through dead trees. "I have hunted these woods for 100 years. I have fed on dozens like you." "Then why are you afraid to come closer?" I challenged. The creature circled the tree, always staying just outside the fire's reach. Rex tracked its movement, growling continuously. "I know what you are," the Wendigo continued. "You killed in your war. You know the taste of desperate hunger. You are already half monster." The words hit hard, because part of them was true. In Korea, during the worst winter of the war, we'd been cut off from supplies for weeks. I'd done things I never talked about. Not even to Mary. "Maybe I am," I admitted, "but I chose to come back, to be human again. You chose to give in." The Wendigo laughed, a sound like breaking bones. "Chose? You think I chose this?" It stepped closer to the fire, seemingly ignoring the pain. In the flickering light, I could see its face more clearly. Behind the monster, there was something almost human. "I was like you once," it said. "A man, a father. When the winter of 1847 came, when the snows trapped us in these mountains, when we ate the last of our food, I held out longer than the others. I watched my children starve. Have you ever heard a child cry from hunger, Douglas Miller? Have. You heard that cry slowly fade to silence?" The creature's voice cracked with something like grief. "I ate them," it whispered. "My own children, to survive, and the forest changed me, made me into this, an eternal hunger that can never be satisfied." For a moment I felt something impossible, pity for this monster. Then it smiled, showing rows of razor teeth. "But you'll understand soon enough." The Wendigo inhaled deeply. The fire began to flicker and dim. It was pulling the heat from the air, smothering my flames. I had to act fast. I grabbed my last 3 flares and my knife. "If I was going down, I'd go down fighting, Rex," I said quietly. "When I say run, you run. Find the other rangers. Go." Rex whined but stayed put, loyal to the end. The fire was almost out. The Wendigo's eyes glowed brighter as darkness crept in. Time to feed, it growled. Yeah, I stood up, flare in one hand, knife in the other. Let's see what Ranger tastes like. I lit the flare and charged. The Wendigo wasn't expecting that. It reared back as I slammed into it, driving the burning flare into its chest. The creature shrieked and swatted me aside, but I'd done damage. I hit the ground hard, tasting blood, but I still had 2 flares left. The Wendigo clutched at the burning wound in its chest. You will suffer. Rex, run, I yelled, but instead of running, Rex launched himself at the creature, biting deep into its leg. The Wendigo howled and grabbed for him. No! I lit another flare and threw it, hitting the monster in the face. It dropped Rex, who scrambled away, limping but alive. 1 flare left. The Wendigo was hurt, angry, but still coming. I backed up to the cathedral tree and broke off a branch. Working. Quickly, I tied my knife to the end with my bootlace, creating a crude spear. You want to know what makes us different? I shouted, lighting my last flare. Humans don't give up. We fight, we survive, and we protect our own. I set the spear tip on fire with the flare, then planted the base against the tree trunk, point facing out. The Wendigo, half blind with rage and pain, charged. It impaled itself on the burning spear. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The creature looked down at the wooden shaft, sticking from its chest, then up at me. In its glowing eyes, I saw something change. The hunger faded, replaced by relief. Thank you, it whispered, in a voice that sounded almost human. Then it fell backward, pulling the spear free. Black blood that smelled like rot poured from the wound. Where it touched the ground, the grass withered and died. The Wendigo crawled toward the cliff edge, leaving a trail of dead earth behind it. At the precipice, it turned back to me one last time. The hunger never ends. It said, until someone ends it for you. It let itself fall backward into the ravine. I heard the impact far below, then nothing. I collapsed against the cathedral tree, exhausted and bleeding. Rex limped over and lay down beside me, resting his head on my leg. Good boy, I managed to say. Good boy. The fog began to lift. For the first time in hours, I could see stars through the canopy. The temperature was rising back to normal. Morning found us still there. A search party led by Ranger Tom Williams discovered us around 7 a.m. They'd been looking all night. Jesus, Doug, Tom said when he saw me. What happened to you? I looked at the scorched earth, the black blood trail leading to the cliff. How could I explain? Mountain lion, I said finally. Big one, it went over the cliff. They never found a body at the bottom of the ravine. Just a cave, covered in ice that wouldn't melt even in summer. Inside the cave, they found remains. Tommy, Walsh, Mike Torres, Sarah Chen, and others, some dating back over a century. The Park Service closed that section of forest permanently. Unstable ground, the signs read. I never told anyone the whole truth. Who would believe me? But sometimes other rangers mention strange things, whispers in the fog. Unseasonable cold, the feeling of being watched, and the hunger. God, the hunger. It never really left me after that night. Sometimes I wake up starving, no matter how much I've eaten. Sometimes I dream of that creature's face, shifting between monster and man. I retired in 1972 after a logging accident cost me 2 fingers to frostbite. Frostbite in the middle of July. The doctors couldn't explain it. I could. Rex lived to be 18, ancient for a German shepherd. He died in his sleep, curled up by my fireplace. I swear in his last moments I heard him growl one more time, like he was keeping something away even at the end. I'm writing this in 1995. I'm an old man now, living alone in a cabin in Oregon, far from those redwoods, far from that ravine. But on cold nights, when the fog rolls in, I still hear whispers. Still feel that gnawing hunger that never quite goes away, and sometimes, just sometimes, I hear Mary's voice in the wind. Come back to the forest, Douglas. Come back to me. I never do, I never will, because I know what waits in the mist, and I know that some hungers are better left unfed. My name is Frank Thompson, and I've been a cave ranger at Mammoth Cave National Park for 6 years now. Most people think caves are just dark holes in the ground, but to me, they're like underground cathedrals. Mammoth Cave is special. It's the longest cave system in the world, with over 400 miles of passages that twist and turn like underground highways. I was doing my usual afternoon patrol on October 15th, 1963. The weather outside was getting cold, but down in the caves, it's always about 54 degrees. Nice and cool. I like the quiet down there. The only sounds were water dripping somewhere far away, and my own footsteps echoing off the limestone walls. I've always been good at understanding caves. After I became a professor teaching geology, I thought that was my calling. But then, well, life doesn't always go the way you plan. After we lost our daughter Sarah in a house fire 2 years ago, I couldn't stay in that life anymore. The caves became my escape. Down here, nothing changes, nothing burns. It's safe. My wife Margaret says I spend too much time underground. She's probably right. We barely talk anymore except to argue about my work hours. But the caves understand. Me, in a way, she doesn't anymore. That afternoon, I was checking one of the deeper sections, about 3 miles from the tourist areas. My flashlight beam swept across the familiar limestone walls as I walked. I'd been through this passage hundreds of times, but then I noticed something different. The light caught on some crystal formations I'd never seen before. They were growing out of the wall in strange, twisted shapes. I stepped closer to examine them. That's when I felt it. The air was getting warmer, not just a little warmer. It was like walking toward an open oven. In all my years studying caves, I knew temperature changes like this weren't normal. Caves are supposed to maintain steady temperatures. I made a note in my logbook. Section 7B, unusual thermal activity. 3:17 p.m. I kept going deeper. The passage started narrowing, which was normal for this area. But then my flashlight hit something that made me stop cold. There was another tunnel branching off, one that definitely wasn't on any of our maps. The edges of this new tunnel were strange. They were too perfect, like someone had carved them with laser precision. Natural caves don't form with edges that sharp. And the walls, they had this weird dark coating that seemed to absorb my flashlight beam. I knew I should go back and report this. That's what the safety manual said to do when you find unmapped passages. But something pulled me forward. Maybe it was scientific curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that I hadn't discovered anything new in months. Or maybe I just didn't want to go home to another silent dinner with Margaret. I marked the entrance with chalk, standard procedure, and stepped into the tunnel. The temperature jumped another 10 degrees. Sweat started beading on my forehead. I could feel my heart beating faster, but I told myself it was just excitement. This could be the biggest discovery in Mammoth Cave in years. About 50 feet in, I heard something that made my skin crawl. It was like scratching, but not like an animal scratching. This was deliberate, rhythmic, like someone dragging their fingernails down a chalkboard, except it was coming from inside the walls. I stopped and listened. The sound stopped too. When I started walking again, it started again. It was following me. "Hello?" I called out, feeling stupid. My voice echoed strangely in this tunnel, not like the normal cave echoes I was used to. It sounded dampened, like the walls were absorbing the sound. No answer. Just that scratching. I checked my watch. It had stopped at 3:17, exactly when. I'd made that note about the temperature. Great. These watches were supposed to be shockproof and water-resistant. I'd have to file a complaint with the equipment department. Then I saw them. Footprints in the soft cave floor. But they weren't human footprints. They had 5 toes, sure, but the toes were too long, too thin. and there were claw marks at the end of each toe, like something had been dragging its claws as it walked. The prints were fresh. Whatever made them had been here recently. Maybe was still here. I should have turned back. Any ranger with half a brain would have turned back. But I kept going, following those strange footprints deeper into the tunnel. The scratching sound was getting louder, and now there was something else. A low humming that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I pressed my hand against the limestone and jerked it back immediately. The wall was vibrating. That's when my flashlight flickered. Just for a second, but in that second of darkness, I could have sworn I saw something move, something pale and quick, scuttling along the ceiling. Steadied my flashlight and swept it upward. Nothing there, just bare rock. You're seeing things, Frank, I told myself. Too many hours underground. But I knew I wasn't seeing things. In 6 years of cave work, my eyes had never played tricks on me. There was something in here with me. Something that didn't want to be seen. The tunnel opened up into a small chamber. My flashlight beam caught something on the far wall, scratches in the rock. At first, they looked random, but as I got closer, I realized they formed patterns, almost like writing, but not in any alphabet I recognized. And below the scratches, arranged in a perfect circle on the chamber floor, were bones. Small animal bones. Bats, rats, maybe some cave crickets, all arranged with their skulls pointing outward, like some kind of ritual circle. I was so focused on the bones that I almost missed the whisper. It was so faint I thought I'd imagined it, but there it was again, coming from deeper in the cave system. It sounded like, no, that was impossible. It sounded like Sarah's voice. Daddy. My heart stopped. I knew it couldn't be her. Sarah was gone. Had been gone for 2 years, but that voice, Daddy, I'm scared, it's dark here. The voice was coming from another tunnel, barely visible in the shadows of the chamber. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to leave, to get out of this cave and never come back. But that voice, it sounded so much like her. I took a step toward the tunnel, then another. My flashlight was shaking in my hand now, making the shadows dance on the walls. That's when I heard the scratching again, but this time it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from above me. I looked up. The ceiling was moving. Not the ceiling itself, but things on the ceiling. Dozens of them. Pale, elongated shapes with too many joints in their limbs. They were crawling across the rock like spiders, but they were the size of children, and their faces. God, their faces were almost human. But the eyes were huge, reflective, like cat's eyes in headlights. They had no noses, just 2 small holes, and their mouths. One of them opened its mouth and made a sound, a perfect imitation of Sarah's voice. Daddy. That's when I ran. I turned and bolted back the way I'd come, my flashlight beam bouncing crazily off the walls. Behind me, I could hear them dropping from the ceiling, their claws scratching against the rock as they gave chase. They were fast. Faster than anything that size should be. I burst out of the tunnel and into the main passage, not stopping to look back. I ran until my lungs burned, until I couldn't hear the scratching anymore. Only then did I stop, gasping for breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I finally made it back to the surface, I was shaking so badly I could barely write my report. But I had to document what I'd seen. Those creatures, that tunnel, the voice that sounded like Sarah. My supervisor read my report and immediately sent me to the infirmary. The doctor said I was dehydrated, possibly suffering from hypoxia. Lack of oxygen can cause hallucinations, he explained. Cave syndrome, some call it. Happens to rangers who spend too much time underground. They gave me a week off. Mandatory rest, they called it. But I know what I saw. And I know I have to go back, because if there's even the slightest chance that voice wasn't just those things imitating my daughter, if there's any chance at all that somehow something of Sarah is still down there in the dark, I have to know. The week off was torture. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those pale things crawling on the ceiling. I heard Sarah's voice echoing in the darkness. Margaret tried to talk to me, but what could I tell her? That I heard our dead daughter calling from inside a cave? On my first day back, I went straight to the records room. I needed to know if anyone else had seen anything strange in that section of the cave. The old files were dusty, some dating. Back to the 1920s when the park first opened, I spent hours going through reports. Most were boring, maintenance logs, visitor counts, that kind of thing. Then I found something that made my hands shake. October 1937. A ranger named William Foster had filed a report about unusual sounds in Section 7B, the same area where I'd found that tunnel. His handwriting was shaky. Heard what sounded like children crying. Found strange markings on walls. Requested backup, but none available. Going back tomorrow to investigate further. There was no follow-up report. According to the personnel files, Foster had resigned the next day and moved to California. But something felt wrong about that. Rangers don't just quit after making a discovery like that. I dug deeper and found Foster's locker assignment from 1937, Locker 23. On a hunch, I went to check it out. Most of the old lockers had been replaced, but a few originals remained in the basement. Locker 23 was rusted shut. I had to use a crowbar to open it. Inside was Foster's old uniform, his hat, and his ranger badge. Why would he leave without his badge? Rangers never leave their badges behind. It's like a soldier leaving their dog. Tags. Under the uniform, I found a leather notebook, Foster's personal journal. The last entry was dated October 14th, 1937, exactly 26 years before my encounter. They know I found them. I hear them at night now, even above ground. They're learning to mimic voices. Today I heard my mother calling me, but she's been dead for 10 years. I have to leave before they follow me home. God help anyone else who finds that tunnel. My mouth went dry. Learning to mimic voices, just like they'd mimicked Sarah. That afternoon, I went back to Section 7B. I told my supervisor I was doing routine maintenance checks. This time, I brought extra equipment, more flashlights, flares, rope, and a camera. If those things were real, I needed proof. The main passage looked normal in the daylight from my flashlight. No strange crystals, no unusual heat. For a moment, I wondered if I had imagined it all. Then I saw my chalk mark on the wall. The tunnel was still there. I approached slowly, listening for any sounds. Nothing. Just the usual cave quiet. The temperature was normal too, cool and steady. Maybe the thermal anomaly had passed. I stepped into the tunnel. My flashlight beam seemed stronger today, cutting through the darkness easily. The sharp edges were still there, still unnaturally perfect. About 30 feet in, I stopped. The footprints were gone. The soft cave floor was smooth, undisturbed, like someone had swept it clean. I continued to the chamber where I'd seen the bone circle. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I turned the corner and the bones were gone. The scratches on the wall were gone. The chamber was completely empty. "What the hell?" I whispered. Then my radio crackled to life. But instead of the dispatcher's voice, I heard something else. Voices from the past, faint and staticky. "Foster here. I found something in Section 7B, requesting backup. Negative, Foster. All units busy with tourist groups. I'm going in alone then. Someone needs to document this." The transmission cut out. Then another voice, one I recognized from old training videos. "This is Ranger Thompson. No, not Frank. David Thompson. Year is 1952. Lost contact with Mitchell 2 hours ago. His last position was Section 7B. My grandfather's voice. He'd been a ranger here too, though he died before I was born. Heart attack, they said. But now I wondered. The radio went silent. Then that humming started again, vibrating through the walls. The temperature began to rise. They were coming. Back. I grabbed my camera and started taking pictures. The empty chamber, the two perfect tunnel walls, everything. I needed evidence. The flash lit up the cave in brief, blinding bursts. That's when I saw it on the ground, Foster's badge, half buried in the dirt. I bent down to pick it up and noticed something else, a small gap in the wall near the floor, big enough for something child-sized to crawl through. The humming grew louder. I could feel it in my teeth now. And underneath it, another sound. Scratching, getting closer. I pocketed Foster's badge and backed toward the entrance. The scratching was coming from that gap in the wall. Something was moving in there, pushing through. A pale hand emerged from the gap, too long, too thin, with too many joints. The fingers ended in black claws that scraped against the rock. I turned and ran. This time, I made it all the way back to the station before stopping. My supervisor took one look at me and shook his head. "Frank, you need more time off." "Look at these photos," I insisted, pulling out my camera. But when we developed the film, every picture was blank. Pure white. Overexposed, the lab tech said. Must have been a problem with the flash. That night, sitting at home, I examined Foster's badge. It was tarnished but intact. Real proof that I hadn't imagined everything. Margaret was already asleep. I sat at the kitchen table, turning the badge over in my hands. Then I heard it, faint scratching at the windows. I got up and checked. Nothing there. Just tree branches in the wind. But when I returned to the table, there was something written in the dust on the surface. 5 words, traced by an invisible finger. "We know where you live." I spent the rest of the night sitting in the living room with all the lights on, Foster's journal in my lap, trying to piece together the truth about Section 7B. Whatever was, down there had been there for at least 26 years, maybe longer, and now it knew who I was. In the morning, I found muddy handprints on the outside of our bedroom window. Handprints with too many joints and claw marks at the tips. They were getting bolder, coming closer, learning, and I still had to go back to work tomorrow. I didn't tell Margaret about the handprints. She was already worried enough about me. Instead, I cleaned them off before she woke up and tried to act normal at breakfast. "You look tired," she said, pouring coffee. "Just thinking about work stuff." She touched my shoulder. "Frank, maybe you should see someone. A doctor, after Sarah. We both need help." I wanted to tell her everything, but how could I explain that our daughter's voice was coming from creatures living under Mammoth Cave? At work that morning, I found a note on my desk. "Meeting with Director Hayes, 10 a.m. Great. The big boss wanted to see me, probably about my episodes. Hayes was a large man who'd never been in a cave in his life. He sat behind his desk looking at my file. "Frank, your colleagues are concerned. They say you've been acting strange, talking about creatures in the caves." "Sir, I just reported what I saw. What you think you saw." He leaned forward. "Look, I know losing a child is hard, but we can't have rangers seeing things that aren't there. It's dangerous." "I'm not seeing things. There's something in Section 7B that—" "Section 7B is off limits as of today," he interrupted. "We're closing it for safety concerns. Unstable rock formations." "What?" "You can't just—" "I can, and I did. You're assigned to surface duty for the next month. Parking lot patrol." I left his office fuming. They were covering it up just like with Foster, just like with my grandfather, probably. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know the truth. I waited until 2 a.m., then drove back to the park. I knew the security patterns, knew how to avoid the cameras. Being a senior ranger had its advantages. I entered through the service entrance, using my keys. The caves were different at night, quieter, darker. Even with my flashlight, the shadows seemed deeper. Section 7B was taped off with yellow danger signs. I ducked under them and made my way to the tunnel. This time I came prepared. I had climbing gear, extra lights, a tape recorder, and Foster's journal. The tunnel was waiting for me. But something was different. The air smelled wrong, like old meat and sulfur. I clicked on the tape recorder. October 22nd, 1963, 2:47 a.m., entering unexplored tunnel in Section 7B. The humming started as soon as I stepped inside. Soft at first, then louder. The walls began to warm up. My flashlight flickered but stayed on. I reached the chamber and froze. The bone circle was back, but this time it wasn't made of animal bones. They were human bones. Small ones. Children's bones. "Oh God," I whispered. The tape recorder kept running. In the center of the circle was a pit I hadn't seen before. About 6 feet wide, perfectly round. I approached carefully and shined my light down. The pit went deep, really deep. I couldn't see the bottom, but I could hear things moving down there. Wet, slithering sounds and voices, dozens of them, all whispering. I recognized some of the whispers. Foster's voice, my grandfather's voice, and then, "Daddy? Why did you leave me in the fire?" Sarah's voice, but wrong, distorted. "You're not my daughter," I said loudly. "My daughter is dead." The whispering stopped. Complete silence. Then, from right behind me, "Are you sure?" I spun around. One of them was standing in the chamber entrance, taller than the others, maybe 7 feet. Its pale skin was stretched tight over 2 long limbs. The face was more human than the others, but the eyes were black pits that seemed to pull in the light. "What are you?" I managed to ask. It tilted its head, studying me. When it spoke, it used multiple voices at once. Foster's, my grandfather's, Sarah's, and others I didn't recognize. "We are the first dwellers, here before your kind, learning, growing, taking." "Taking what?" It smiled, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth, voices, memories, children, the bones in the circle. Oh God, the bones. "You took them, the missing children over the years?" "Took, learned, became." More of them were crawling out of the pit now, dozens, their pale bodies glistening in my flashlight beam. Some were small, child-sized, others were massive, barely fitting in the chamber. "You're all coming with me," I heard myself say. Then the leader did something that froze my blood. It changed. Its face shifted, melted, reformed, and suddenly I was looking at Sarah, perfect in every detail, my little girl, just as she was before the fire. "Daddy," she said in Sarah's exact voice, "I missed you so much. Why did you let me burn?" "Stop it," I screamed. "Stop it!" The other creatures began changing too, becoming the children whose bones lay in the circle. They surrounded me, reaching out with small hands. "Help us, mister." "Where's my mommy?" "It's dark down here." I backed away, but they kept coming. The tape recorder fell from my hand, still running. I had to get out, had to warn people. I pulled out a flare and struck it. Red light exploded in the chamber. The creatures shrieked, a sound like nails on glass, and cowered away. Their skin bubbled and smoked where the light touched it. The leader, still wearing Sarah's face, snarled at me. "You cannot stop us. We know the upper world now. We will take more, many more." I threw the flare at them and ran. Behind me, I could hear them recovering, starting to chase. But I had a head start. I made it to the main passage, but I could hear them coming. Fast. Too fast. My flashlight was dimming. The batteries were dying. That's when I remembered something from Foster's journal. They were learning to come above ground, learning to live in our world. I had to stop them here, had to seal the tunnel. I'd brought small explosive charges, standard equipment for clearing cave-ins. I'd never thought I'd use them like this. I set the charges at the tunnel entrance, my hands shaking. The creatures were getting closer. I could hear their claws on the rock, their mimicking voices. "Daddy, don't leave me again." "Frank, this is your supervisor. Stop what you're doing." "Son, this is Dad. Put down the explosives." I lit the fuse and ran. The explosion shook the entire cave system. Rock and dust filled the passage. When it cleared, the tunnel was gone, buried under tons of limestone. But as I stood there catching my breath, I heard something that made my heart sink. Scratching. From inside the walls all around me. They weren't just in that tunnel. They were everywhere. In all the walls. They'd been spreading through the entire cave system, and now they were angry. I ran for the exit. The scratching followed me, surrounded me. The walls themselves seemed to move, Just before I reached the surface, I felt claws rake across my back, tearing through my jacket. I burst out into the night air and kept running until I reached my car. When I finally stopped and looked back, I saw them, dozens of pale shapes at the cave entrance, testing the boundaries, seeing how far they could come into our world. They were learning, getting stronger, bolder, and they knew where I lived. The next morning, they found me unconscious in my car in the parking lot. My jacket was shredded, my back covered in deep scratches. The tape recorder was still in my pocket. But when they played it back, all they heard was static. Section 7B was permanently sealed after the accidental explosion. I was quietly retired with full benefits on the condition that I never speak about what happened. But I know they're still down there, waiting, learning. And sometimes on quiet nights, I still hear scratching at my windows. And Sarah's voice, calling from the dark, "Daddy, when are you coming back?" They gave me a nice pension and a cabin near the edge of town, far from Mammoth Cave. The official story was that I'd hurt my back in a rockfall. Nobody asked questions. Nobody wanted to know. Margaret left me a month after the incident. She said I'd changed, that I wasn't the man she married. She was right. How could I be the same after what I'd seen? For a while I tried to forget. I took up fishing, started a garden, even got a dog, a big German shepherd I named Rex. Dogs can sense things humans can't. Rex would growl at empty corners of the room, bark at shadows. He knew. 3 months passed. The scratches on my back healed, leaving white scars that looked like claw marks. Every night before bed, I'd check the windows, double-check the locks. Some nights I'd hear scratching, faint, distant, but getting closer. Then the children started disappearing. The first was Tommy Watson, age 8. Vanished from his backyard in broad daylight. His mother said she'd only looked away for a minute. When she turned back, he was gone. Just his shoes left behind, sitting neatly by the sandbox. The second was Lisa Chen, age 10. Disappeared during a school field trip to Mammoth Cave. They found her backpack near a restricted area. Section 7B, I tried to warn the police. Went to the station with Foster's journal, my photos still blank, everything I had. The officer listened politely, then called my doctor. Post-traumatic stress, the doctor said. Common in accident victims. These pills will help. But pills don't stop ancient things that live in the dark. More children vanished, always near cave entrances, not just Mammoth Cave now, but smaller caves all over Kentucky. The pattern was spreading. One night, Rex woke me with frantic barking. I grabbed my flashlight and found him at the back door, hackles raised, growling at something outside. I looked through the window. In the moonlight, I saw small footprints in the snow, child-sized. But the footprints had claw marks. I opened the door, and Rex bolted outside. I heard him barking, then a yelp, then silence. "Rex!" I called. "Rex!" I found him by the tree line, alive but shaking, staring at something in the woods. I followed his gaze and saw them, pale shapes moving between. The trees, child-sized but moving wrong. Too fast, too fluid. They were using the cave systems like a network, spreading out, coming to the surface at night, learning to tolerate moonlight, getting bolder. I went back inside and called the park service, got the night security. "You need to check." "Section 7B, I told him. "The seal might be broken." "Sir, that section's been filled with concrete. Nothing's getting in or out. Just check, please." He sighed. "I'll send someone in the morning." But morning was too late. At 3:17 a.m. Always. 3:17, I noticed. My phone rang. An unlisted number. "Hello?" Breathing. Then, "Why did you bury us, Daddy?" Sarah's voice. But underneath it, other voices. Layers of children's voices, all speaking together. "You're not Sarah," I said. "We are all Sarah now. We are all the children. Come back to the dark, Daddy. Come home." The line went dead. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. At dawn, I drove to Mammoth Cave. I had to see for myself. The parking lot was full of police cars. Rangers were evacuating tourists. I found Hayes, the director, looking pale and shaken. What happened? He glared at me. You know damn well what happened. The concrete seal is gone, not broken, gone, like it was never there. The children, 7 more missing, all from the tour group that went down this morning. He grabbed my arm. What did you wake up down there, Frank? I didn't. Wake them up, they were always awake, always waiting. That night the scratching at my windows turned to tapping, rhythmic, patient. When I looked outside, I saw them, not hiding anymore, standing in my yard, dozens of them, all with children's faces, all with black, empty eyes. Come out, Daddy, they called in unison. Come play with us. Rex cowered under the bed. Smart dog. I called 911. By the time the police arrived, they were gone. Just footprints in the snow. The officer looked at the prints and went pale. Jesus, what kind of animal? Not an animal, I said. He didn't write that in his report. The disappearances continued. The government got involved. Men in suits came. To town, asked questions, took measurements. They put up a new fence around Mammoth Cave. Guards, floodlights. It didn't matter. The things had learned to use all the caves, all the hidden passages. Kentucky is limestone country. The whole state is hollow underneath. And they were in all of it. 1 year after I found that tunnel, on October 15th, 1964, they came for me. I woke to Rex's growling. The bedroom window was open. I knew I'd locked it. Something was standing by my bed. In the darkness, I could just make out the shape. Child-sized. It leaned closer. Daddy. Sarah's voice. Perfect. Exactly as I remembered it. I'm cold. Can I sleep with you and Mommy? For one horrible moment, in the darkness, I almost reached for her. Almost pulled back the covers to let my little girl climb into bed like, oh, she used to. Then Rex barked and the spell broke. The thing smiled, too wide, too many teeth. Soon, Daddy. Soon you'll come home to the dark. We all go home to the dark eventually. It crawled, backwards, on all fours, to the window, and disappeared. Moved the next day. Left Kentucky entirely. Went to Arizona, desert country, no caves, lots of sunlight, but sometimes, on quiet nights, I still hear scratching in the walls. Still hear children's voices calling from the darkness, and I know they're spreading. Using. The cave systems like highways under America. Learning, growing, taking more children to add to their collection. If you ever explore a cave and find a tunnel with edges too perfect to be natural, turn back. If you hear children's voices in the dark, run. And if someone you lost long ago calls to you from the shadows, remember, the dead don't speak. But the things that take their voices do, they're still down there. In every cave, in every dark place, waiting, learning, and they're getting better at pretending to be us. Rex died last month. Old age, the vet said, but I know better. He stopped eating after he started growling at the heating vents, started barking at the pipes in the walls. They found us again. They always do, because they have all the time in the world. And they're very patient. Tomorrow, I'm boarding up the vents, sealing the pipes. It won't stop them, I know that now. But it might slow them down. And if you're reading this, remember, check your windows, lock your doors, and never, ever follow a loved one's voice into the dark. Because once they learn your voice, they never forget it. And they'll use it to call others home. I lived in Arizona for 5 years. 5 years of thinking I was safe. 5 years of pretending those things couldn't reach me in the desert. I was wrong. The first sign came in the summer of 1969. The local news reported strange sounds coming from the old copper mines outside Phoenix. Miners from the 1800s had dug deep into the earth, following veins of copper. Most of those shafts were sealed now. Dangerous, the authorities said. But I knew better. Sealed mines are just caves with doors. Then came the story about the Mitchell family. They lived near one of those old mines. Their 7-year-old daughter, Rebecca, went missing during a birthday party. 12 kids in the backyard, parents everywhere, and somehow Rebecca just vanished. They found her shoes by an old ventilation shaft. The kind that connects to the mine tunnels below. I knew I had to get involved. These parents, these police, they didn't understand what they were dealing with. I did. I went to the Mitchell house the next day. Mrs. Mitchell answered the door, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said. "I used to work at Mammoth Cave. I might be able to help find Rebecca." She let me in. Her husband was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at photos of Rebecca. "The police think she fell into the shaft," he said, "but it's covered with a steel grate, bolted down. No way a child could move it." "Can you show me?" We walked to the backyard. The ventilation shaft was about 4 feet wide, covered with a heavy steel grate. The bolts were still in place, but I knelt down and examined them. The bolts had been loosened from below, then carefully screwed back in. Just enough to hold the grate in place, but loose enough that something could push it aside from underneath. Then replace it. They were getting smarter. "Mr. Mitchell," I said quietly, "has Rebecca been having bad dreams lately? Maybe hearing voices at night?" He stared at me. "How did you know? For weeks now. She kept saying other kids were calling her from inside the walls. We thought it was just nightmares after her friend Katie went missing last month." Katie. Another child. The pattern was starting again. That night I sat in my motel room with a map of Arizona spread on the bed. I marked every old mine, every cave system, every place where tunnels went deep into the earth. Then I marked where children had gone missing in the last year. The marks formed a pattern, a network. They were using the old mining tunnels like subway systems, moving underground, coming up through forgotten shafts and sealed entrances. I picked up my phone and called the only person who might believe me, Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a geologist who'd studied the Mammoth Cave incident. The government had brought her in as a consultant. "Frank," she answered, "I haven't heard from you since—" "They're in Arizona, Elizabeth, using the old mines." Silence. Then, "How many children?" "7 that I know of. Maybe more. I'll be on the next flight." Elizabeth arrived the next morning. She hadn't changed much, still wore her hair in a tight bun, still had that sharp, scientific look in her eyes. But now there was something else there too. Fear. We drove to the Mitchell house. The parents had gone to the police station for more questioning, so we had the place to ourselves. "Show me the shaft," Elizabeth said. I led her to the backyard. She examined the grate with instruments I didn't recognize, some kind of sensors that beeped and flashed. "Interesting," she murmured. "There are trace elements here that shouldn't exist in Arizona. Minerals found only in deep cave systems in Kentucky. They brought their environment with them? No. They are their environment. These creatures, whatever they are, they change the very rock around them. They're terraforming, Frank, making our world more like theirs." We removed the grate. Elizabeth lowered a probe on a long cable down the shaft. The device sent back temperature readings, atmospheric data, even sound. "Listen to this," she said, handing me headphones. I heard it immediately. Scratching, distant, voices, children laughing and playing. But underneath, that familiar chittering sound the creatures made when they thought no one was listening. "We have to go down there," I said. "I was afraid you'd say that. We got permission from the authorities by claiming we were conducting a geological survey. They were desperate enough to allow it. 7 missing children in 6 months had the whole city on edge." We entered through the main mine entrance, a boarded-up tunnel cut into the side of a hill. Our headlamps cut through the darkness as we descended. The temperature dropped with every step. About 200 feet down, Elizabeth stopped. "Look at the walls." The rough-hewn rock was changing, becoming smoother, more organic-looking. Those same impossible angles I'd seen in Mammoth Cave. "They're reshaping the tunnels," I said. We pressed on. The scratching sounds grew louder, and then we heard it. A child singing. "Ring around the rosy." We followed the voice through a maze of tunnels that shouldn't exist. The old mining maps were useless here. This was their territory now. Finally, we emerged into a large chamber. Our lights revealed dozens of alcoves carved into the walls. In each alcove was a child. They sat perfectly still, their eyes closed, their skin pale. "Rebecca," I called softly. One of the children opened her eyes. Rebecca Mitchell, but her eyes were different now, larger, darker. "We've been waiting for you," she said, in a voice that was hers, but not hers. "We knew the caveman would come." The other children opened their eyes in unison, all with those same dark, enlarged eyes. "Where are the others?" Elizabeth asked. "The missing children from Kentucky." "We are all here," they said together. "We are all one now, learning together, growing together." From the shadows above came that familiar chittering. I looked up and saw them. Hundreds of the creatures clinging to the ceiling, watching, waiting. "You can't take more children," I said. "We won't let you." The Rebecca thing smiled. "You still don't understand. We don't take children, caveman. We give them something better. We make them eternal." "What are you?" Elizabeth demanded. "We are the deep," all the children spoke at once. "We are the first. We were here when your ancestors crawled from the mud. We will be here when your cities turn to dust. And now your children will be with us forever." The creatures above began to descend, their pale bodies flowing down the walls like living water. "Run," I told Elizabeth. We turned and fled back through the tunnels. Behind us came the sound of hundreds of claws on stone and children's voices calling, "Don't leave us! Come play! We love you!" We barely made it out. When we emerged into sunlight, gasping and shaking, we found the authorities waiting. "Did you find anything?" the sheriff asked. I looked at Elizabeth. What could we say? That their children were alive but changed? That ancient things were stealing kids to make them into something else? "Cave-in risk," Elizabeth said professionally. "You need to seal all entrances immediately, full concrete, at least 20 feet thick." They did it. Pumped tons of concrete into every known entrance, put up fences, warning signs, armed guards. It didn't matter. 2 weeks later, Rebecca Mitchell came home. She walked into her house at 3:17 a.m., clean and unharmed. Her parents cried with joy. The authorities called it a miracle, but I saw the news footage. I saw her eyes, too large, too dark. And I saw how she kept looking at her little brother's room with a strange, hungry smile. They're not stealing children anymore. They're sending them back, changed, to live among us, to watch us, to select more for the deep. And now it's not just in Arizona or Kentucky. I get reports from all over the country, missing children who return different. Cave systems that seem to connect in impossible ways, scratching sounds in the walls of schools and homes. They're building a network, not just of tunnels, but of children. They're children, living in our communities, our families, waiting for the right moment. And every night at 3:17 a.m., I still hear Sarah's voice. "Daddy, we're coming home, all of us, forever. The war isn't coming, it's already here, and we're losing. Our children are their soldiers now. It's been 2 years since Arizona." I'm writing this in 1971 from a small apartment in Chicago. Far from any caves, I thought, but I was wrong again. The cities have tunnels too, sewers, subways, maintenance passages, a whole world under our feet. The changed children are everywhere, now. Rebecca Mitchell's story was just the beginning. Dozens of missing kids have returned to their families across the country. They look normal enough. They go to school, play with friends, eat dinner with their parents, but they're different. Elizabeth and I started tracking them. We'd travel to different cities, observe them from a distance. They all had the same signs. Eyes that were slightly too large, skin a bit too pale. They avoided direct sunlight when they could. And they all had this habit of tilting their heads when listening, like they were hearing something we couldn't. The scariest part? They were organizing. We noticed it first in Denver. 3 returned children from different families all drew the Same picture in art class, a map of tunnel systems that didn't exist on any city plans. In Boston, 5 changed kids were caught trying to open a sealed maintenance tunnel under their school. Then I got a call from Mrs. Mitchell. "Frank, this is Rebecca's mother. I need to talk to you. We met at a diner outside Phoenix. She looked terrible, thin, dark circles under her eyes. It's Rebecca," she whispered. "At night I hear her talking to someone in her room, but when I check she's alone. And last week I found her little brother in the basement digging. He said Rebecca told him to make a door for their friends." "Where's Rebecca now?" "School. At least that's where she's supposed to be. Sometimes she doesn't come home until after dark. Says she was at the library, but you don't believe her," she started crying. "I want my little girl back, my real little girl." There was nothing I could say. Her real daughter was gone the moment she entered that tunnel. That night, Elizabeth called with worse news. "Frank, I've been analyzing seismic data from the last 6 months. There's activity under every major city where children have returned. They're digging, building connections." Connecting to what? To each other. It's like a giant spider web under the country, and it all leads back to one place. Mammoth Cave. Yes, whatever's down there, it's the center, the source. I knew what I had to do. It was time to go back to where it all started. I drove for 2 days straight, arriving in Kentucky just before dawn. The park was officially closed. Too many incidents. But I still had my old ranger keys. The entrance to Section 7B was different now. The concrete seal was gone, replaced by an official-looking metal door with electronic locks. Someone had been maintaining access. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting security guards. It was Sarah, not a creature imitating her, not a pale thing with her face. It was Sarah, my daughter, exactly as she was before the fire. Right, down to the small scar on her chin from when she fell off her bike. "Hi, Daddy," she said. My heart stopped. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was impossible. But my heart... "Sarah?" My voice cracked. She smiled, that same sweet smile that used to greet me when I came home from work. "I missed you so much. They told me you'd come back." "They?" "My new family. They saved me, Daddy, from the fire. They brought me down where it's safe, where nothing can hurt me." I took a step toward her, then another. She held out her arms for a hug. That's when I noticed her shadow. It was wrong, too long, too many angles. "You're not Sarah," I said. Her face didn't change. That same sweet smile. "I am Sarah, just more now. Better. I can live forever down here, Daddy. You can too. We can be a family again." "What about your mother?" A flicker of something crossed her face. Just for a second. "Mommy can't come. She doesn't understand. But you do. You've seen them. You know they're not monsters." She was right. I had seen them, studied them, and part of me, the part still broken by grief, wanted to believe. "Come with me, Daddy. Just for a little while. Let me show you how beautiful it is down there." She reached for my hand. Her skin was warm, real. I almost took it. Then I remembered Rebecca Mitchell's hungry smile as she watched her little brother. Remembered all those missing children, changed and returned as something else. "No," I said. Her smile faded. "You don't love me anymore?" "I love my daughter. But my daughter died in a fire 2 years ago." For a moment her mask slipped. I saw what was underneath, ancient, patient, hungry. Then Sarah's face returned. "We'll wait," she said. "We have all the time in the world. And one day, Daddy, you'll be so lonely that you'll come to us. Everyone comes to us eventually." She walked backward into the darkness of the cave, maintaining eye contact until the shadows swallowed her. I left Kentucky that night and haven't been back. But the spread continues. Last month, a school in Oregon had to be evacuated when children opened a door in the basement, a perfectly round tunnel that went straight down into bedrock. In Florida, An entire kindergarten class disappeared during recess, only to return. 3 days later, with enlarged eyes and cave mud on their clothes. The authorities are starting to notice. There are secret meetings, classified reports. But what can they do? You can't arrest evolution. You can't stop something that's been waiting. Underground, since before humans learned to make fire. Elizabeth went missing last week. Her apartment was empty, but her computer was still on. The last thing she'd typed was, "They're not invading, they're inheriting." I think I understand now. We've always been afraid of what might come from the stars, but the real threat was always beneath us, patient, learning, using our own children as bridges between their world and ours. Last night I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a photo, my wedding photo. But Sarah was standing between Margaret and me, smiling. She wasn't in the original, written on the back. "Family reunion soon. 3:17 a.m. Don't be late. They're coming for me, all of them. The changed children, the ancient ones, and whatever my daughter has become. I've bought all the lights I can find. Flood lamps, flashlights, flares. I've boarded up my windows, sealed my vents. It won't be enough, but I had to write this down. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand. If you're reading this, watch your children. Watch for signs. And if someone you love goes missing near a cave or a mine or even a deep basement, pray they stay missing. Because what comes back might wear their face and speak with their voice. But it won't be them. Not anymore. The scratching started an hour ago. It's coming from everywhere, walls, ceiling, floor, and outside my door I can hear them. Dozens of children's voices, all singing the same song. Ring around the rosy, pocketful of posies. They're here. Sarah's voice rises above the others. "Come out, Daddy, it's time to go home. Home, to the deep, to the dark, where my daughter waits with her new family. I know I won't survive the night. This is my last entry. Remember, they're patient, they're learning, they're already in our homes, our schools, our families, and they're winning. The door is opening. They didn't even need to break it down. They've learned to use keys." Sarah is standing in my doorway. She looks exactly as she did the day she died, except for her shadow. It stretches all the way down the hall, touching the shadows of all the other children behind her. "Hi, Daddy," she says. "Are you ready to come home now?" I close my eyes and remember her real smile. My real daughter. "Yes," I whisper. "I'm ready." And the darkness takes me. My name is Marcus Washington, and I've been a park ranger in the Everglades for 15 years. But nothing in all those years prepared me for what happened that October night in 1995. The Everglades is a strange place, even on normal days. Miles and miles of sawgrass stretch out like a golden ocean, broken up by little islands of trees we call hammocks. When the sun starts to set, the whole place turns copper-colored, like someone spilled liquid fire across the water. I was out in my airboat that evening, doing what I did most days, checking on alligator nests and making notes for the park service. The airboat's fan was loud, but I could still hear the regular evening sounds. Frogs croaking, insects buzzing, birds calling to each other as they settled in for the night. It was like nature's own orchestra, and after all these years, I knew the music by heart. Then it all stopped, just like someone had flipped a switch, every single sound cut off. No frogs, no insects, not even the whisper of wind through the sawgrass. The silence was so complete, so wrong, that it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I cut the airboat engine and drifted, listening. In 15 years, I'd never heard the Everglades go quiet like this. Even the water seemed to hold its breath. That's when I saw the moon rising. Now, I've seen plenty of full moons out here, but this one was different. It looked too big, too bright, like it was hanging closer to Earth than it should. It painted sharp black shadows across the water and turned the sawgrass silver. As I sat there in my drifting boat, I noticed something else strange. The water had these ripples, perfect circles spreading out, like someone had dropped stones. But there was nothing dropping, no wind, no animals. Just these circles appearing on the dead calm water. I'd been documenting alligator nests all week, and the gators had been acting weird too. Big males that should have been defending their territory were just gone. They'd abandoned prime spots they'd held for years. In all my time here, I'd never seen anything make a 15-foot gator run away. Then I smelled it. You know how a wet dog smells? It was like that, but mixed with something else. Something that made my stomach turn and my instincts scream danger. It was a wild smell, a predator smell. But not like any predator I knew in these swamps. The water around my boat was lower than it should have been. We'd had plenty of rain lately, but in some spots the water had dropped so much you could see the old cypress stumps that usually stayed hidden, like something had been drinking, or maybe the water was just trying to get away from whatever was coming. That's when I heard them, howls, echoing across the wetlands. They started far away, then got taken up by other voices, closer and closer. Now, there haven't been wolves in Florida for longer than anyone can remember. But these howls, they were almost like wolves. Almost. But there was something wrong with them. Something that sounded, I don't know how else to say this, but they sounded like they had words in them. Like they were trying to speak. I should tell you a bit more about myself. I'm 41 years old. Built solid from years of working in these swamps. Before I became a ranger, I was a wildlife biologist. Had a good career going too, until I published some research that nobody wanted to believe. They said I was crazy, that I was seeing things that weren't there. Maybe that's why I ended up out here, away from the universities and their closed minds. Around my neck, I wear an old shark tooth on a leather cord. My Seminole grandmother gave it to me when I was just a kid. She used to tell me stories about things in the swamp, things that could change their shape, things that walked like men but weren't men at all. I used to think they were just stories to keep kids from wandering off. Now I'm not so sure. My partner Sarah died 3 years ago from some rare disease the doctors couldn't figure out. After that, I started taking the night shifts, the solo patrols. Being alone out here didn't bother me. In fact, it helped. The swamp doesn't judge, it just is. But lately, I'd been having these dreams. Dreams where something was hunting me through the sawgrass. Something that ran on 2 legs but moved like a wolf. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, the taste of fear in my mouth. Over the past month, I'd been finding dead animals, not killed by gators or panthers. I know what those kills look like. These were different, surgical, precise, like something had taken exactly what it wanted and left the rest. Missing organs, clean cuts, no mess. That night, as I guided my airboat through the familiar channels, I found something that made my blood run cold. Another airboat torn apart, not sunk or damaged by weather, torn. Deep scratches in the metal like claws had ripped through it. But the claw marks were huge, and the spacing, it didn't match any animal I knew. I tried to radio back to base. This is Ranger Washington. Anyone copy? Static. Then between the white noise I heard breathing, deep, heavy breathing, and a low growl that got louder when I spoke. Who is this? I asked, though my gut already knew this wasn't a who. It was a what. The radio went dead. I pushed on, following my usual patrol route. That's when I saw the tracks on a muddy bank. They were huge, bigger than my hand with fingers spread. Like a dog's paw, but wrong. The toes were longer, more like fingers. And the stride. Whatever made these tracks walked upright. When I got back to my supply cache on one of the hammocks, I found my sealed containers had been opened. Nothing was missing, but everything had been touched, examined, sniffed. My spare batteries were lined up in a neat row. My food packets were stacked by type. Something with intelligence had been through my things. The temperature started dropping, which was weird for October in Florida. Mist rose from the water, but it moved against the wind, creeping through the sawgrass like it had a mind of its own. On another island, I found bones, dozens of them, arranged in patterns, circles within. Circles, stars made of ribs and femurs. It looked like territory marking, but also like art, like something was saying, "This is our place, we are here." My compass started acting crazy whenever I pointed it toward certain areas. The needle would spin wildly like the magnetic field. It was all messed up. Those areas weren't on any of our maps. I checked my camera traps next. Every single one was destroyed. Not knocked over or damaged by weather, taken apart. The memory cards were gone, but the batteries were still there, placed carefully on the ground. Whatever did this wanted the pictures, but didn't need the power. As midnight got closer, I started seeing movement in the sawgrass. Not random, not wind, coordinated. Like several things were moving together, getting closer, tightening a circle around me. The howls started again, closer now, and in them, I swear, I heard my name, Marcus. That's when I knew. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just hunting me, it knew me. I turned off my airboat engine and just floated there, watching the sawgrass move in patterns that made no sense. The moon was so bright now it cast shadows sharp as knives. And in those shadows I saw them, eyes first. Glowing yellow, reflecting the moonlight like cat's eyes, but set higher off the ground than any Florida panther, way higher. These eyes were watching me from 7, maybe 8 feet up. Then came the shapes, big, massive, moving between the grass and trees like smoke. I counted at least 5 of them, maybe more. They were keeping their distance, but I could tell they were circling, getting into position. My mouth went dry. Everything my grandmother had told me, every weird death I'd investigated, every strange track I'd photographed, it all clicked together in my head like puzzle pieces. The largest shadow stepped into a patch of moonlight, and I saw it clearly. For the first time, it stood upright like a man, but that's where the similarity ended. Its head was all wrong, elongated like a wolf's, with a muzzle full of teeth that gleamed white in the darkness. The body was covered in dark fur, but muscled like a bodybuilder. And the hands, they had claws, long ones, but with thumbs. Actual thumbs. These things could grab, could hold, could use tools. As if to prove my point, I heard my airboat engine sputter and die. I hadn't touched it, but something had. When I looked back, I saw one of them pulling away from my boat, and in its hand was a piece of my engine. They were working together, I realized. Like a wolf pack, but smarter, much smarter. One had disabled my boat while the others kept me distracted. Classic hunting strategy. The big one had to be the alpha, made a sound. Not quite a bark, not quite words, but something in between. The others responded immediately, shifting positions. They were talking to each other. I grabbed my camera, thinking maybe I could get proof this time. The flash went off, and the creatures reacted instantly, but not with fear. They turned away, shielded their eyes, then melted back into the shadows with practiced ease, like they'd dealt with cameras before. That's when I noticed the markings. In the moonlight, I could see patterns in their fur, not natural markings. These were made, painted or dyed into their coats, symbols, purposeful designs that meant something. The alpha moved closer, staying just at the edge of the light. It lifted its head and let out a howl that made my bones vibrate. The others joined in, their voices weaving together into something that sounded almost like music, almost like language. My radio crackled to life, static at first, then voices, human voices, crying for help, but I recognized them. Park rangers I knew, people I worked with, except they were all back at the station, safe. These things were mimicking human voices, playing them back to me like recordings. "Marcus, help me, Marcus." It was Sarah's voice, my dead partner. They were using my memories against me. I realized then what they were doing. They weren't just hunting me. They were studying me, testing me, learning what made me react, what made me afraid. The big one. actually gestured toward a specific island. The others closed in slightly, not threatening exactly, but making it clear I had one direction to go. They were herding me, like wolves with a deer, pushing me towards something, and God help me, I had no choice but to go. I steered my dead airboat like a regular boat now, using a pole to push through the shallow water. The pack kept pace with me, some in the water, some on land. They moved, like shadows, barely making a splash or sound. The island they were herding me toward was different from the others. Older. The trees were massive, their roots twisted into strange shapes. In the center was a clearing I'd never seen before, though I'd patrolled this area hundreds of times. That's when I understood. They hadn't just been watching me tonight. They'd been watching me for weeks, maybe months, learning my routes, waiting for the right moon. As I pulled my boat onto the muddy bank, they closed in, not attacking but cutting off any escape. The Alpha stepped into the clearing, and in the bright moonlight, I got my first real look at it. It was magnificent and terrifying all at once. Over 7 feet tall, walking perfectly upright, its eyes showed intelligence, real, thinking intelligence. This wasn't some rabid animal. This was something that could plan, could think, could remember. The others spread out around the clearing. Each took a specific spot, like they'd done this before. Some kind of ritual, a ceremony. The Alpha approached me slowly. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. It stopped about 10 feet away and did something that shocked me to my core. It pointed. First at me, then at my shark tooth necklace, then at markings carved into the ancient trees, the same symbols that were in its fur. My grandmother's words came flooding back. Some things are older than the tribes, older than people. They were. Here first, we learned to share the land. The Alpha made more sounds, that half bark, half speech thing. But now I was starting to hear patterns in it. Repeated sounds, like words. It was trying to communicate. I did the only thing I could think of. I held up my hands, palms out. The universal sign for, I mean no harm. The creature tilted its head, studying me. Then it did something that sent chills down my spine. It mimicked my gesture perfectly. Hands up, palms out. These things could learn, could copy, could understand. The Alpha barked, spoke again, and one of the others came forward carrying something, my missing camera trap. They knew exactly what it was, what it did. The Alpha took it and with deliberate movements crushed it in one massive hand. The message was clear. No pictures, no proof, no evidence. But then the Alpha did something else. It drew in the dirt with one long claw. Simple shapes at first. Circles, lines, then more complex symbols. Some looked like the ones on the trees, on their fur. It was teaching me, or testing me, or both. I knelt down, my heart hammering, and drew back. I copied one of its symbols, then added a question mark. The universal sign for what does this mean? The pack stirred. Low growls rippled through them. Had I made a mistake, offended them somehow? The Alpha studied my drawing for a long moment, then it added to it. Lines connecting to my symbol, creating a more complex pattern. It pointed to itself, then to the others, then to the trees around us. Territory. It was showing me their territory. For the next hour, though it felt like forever, we drew in the dirt. The Alpha showed me boundaries, paths, sacred places. It showed me where I could go and where I couldn't, where they hunted, where they lived. They weren't mindless beasts. They were an intelligent species, living hidden in the deepest parts of the Everglades. And they were letting me know, we've been here all along. We'll be here after you're gone. Respect our space and we'll respect yours. But then something changed. The wind shifted, bringing a new scent. The pack went rigid, alert. The Alphas. Heads snapped up, nostrils flaring. They smelled something, something that scared them. That's when I heard it. Helicopter blades in the distance, getting closer. The Park Service was looking for me. The Alpha's eyes locked with mine, and in that moment I saw something I never expected to see in those yellow depths. Fear. Not of me, but of what was coming. The helicopter searchlight swept across the trees, getting closer. The other creatures began to pace, agitated, looking to their leader for guidance. The Alpha barked out sharp commands, and they started to scatter into defensive positions. I realized these things had been hiding successfully for who knows how long. Decades, centuries maybe. They knew how to avoid being seen. But now, because of me, they were exposed. The Alpha turned back to me. It could have run, could have left me here for the helicopter to find. Instead, it did something that still haunts me. It grabbed my arm, not roughly but firmly, and pulled me toward the deeper shadows of the trees. It was trying to hide me too. "No," I said, probably the first word I'd spoken in an hour. "They'll keep searching if they don't find me." The creature studied my face. Those intelligent eyes seemed to understand. It released my arm and stepped back. The searchlight was getting closer. In minutes, it would sweep over this clearing. These creatures would be exposed. Everything would change. The Alpha looked at me one more time. Then it raised one massive hand and pointed at my chest, right at my grandmother's shark tooth. It made a gesture, a circle like the ones we'd been drawing. Then it touched its own chest. I understood. We were connected now, part of the same circle. The Alpha barked one final command. The pack melted into the swamp with incredible speed, vanishing, like they'd never existed. But the Alpha stayed just a moment longer. It reached out with one clawed hand. I thought it might attack, might decide I was too much of a threat after all. Instead, it grasped my hand, my left hand, in what was almost like a handshake. Then its jaws flashed forward. The pain was instant and brutal. 2 of my fingers were gone, bitten clean off. I screamed, couldn't help it, and fell to my knees, clutching my maimed hand. When I looked up through tears of pain, the Alpha was already disappearing into the shadows. But I heard its voice, one last time. "Remember." The words were garbled, barely recognizable, but they were definitely words. English words. The helicopter appeared overhead seconds later. The searchlight found me, and I heard voices shouting. They'd found me. They were rescuing me. As they lowered a harness, I quickly rubbed out our drawings in the dirt with my boot. No evidence, no proof, just like they wanted. At the hospital, they said a gator got me. Made sense. Happens to rangers sometimes. I didn't correct them. I still work for the Park Service, but I put in for day shifts now. I created a map, though, a secret one. It shows the territories they revealed to me that night. I monitor those areas, keep tourists away from them. Sometimes. Other rangers mention strange howls at night, weird tracks, equipment that goes missing and shows up later, taken apart and examined. I just nod and change the subject. I've made contact with some Seminole trackers, quiet men who know the old stories. We share information carefully. They weren't surprised when I told them what happened. They just nodded and said, "The first. People are still here, always have been. My left hand only has 3 fingers now. When people ask, I tell them about the alligator attack. It's a good story, believable. But sometimes, on full moon nights when I'm home safe, I'll hear howling in the distance. Not regular wolves. We don't have those in Florida. These howls are different, deeper. And if I listen carefully, real carefully, I can hear words in them. They're still out there, watching, waiting, protecting their ancient grounds. And every time I touch that shark tooth around my neck, I remember our agreement. They'll stay hidden and I'll keep their secret, because some things in this world need to stay mysterious. Some creatures deserve their shadows. And if you ever find yourself in the deep Everglades on a full moon night and everything goes quiet, the insects, the frogs, everything, just turn around and leave. Don't investigate. Don't take pictures. Some mysteries are better left alone. After all, we're not the only intelligent species on this planet. We're just the loudest. My name is Amanda Wolfson, and I've been a park ranger at Devil's Tower for 6 years now. Most people know this place from that old Alien movie, but trust me, the reality is far stranger than anything Hollywood could dream up. That morning, in late September, I was doing my usual rounds, checking the trails after a heavy storm the night before. The sun was just coming up, painting the tower gold and orange against the sky. It's always beautiful at sunrise. But something felt different that day. The air had this weird electric feeling like right before lightning strikes, even though the sky was completely clear. I noticed it first when I walked past the prairie dog town near the base of the tower. Usually those little guys are all over the place, chattering and popping in and out of their holes. But that morning, dead silence. Every single burrow was empty. In 6 years, I'd never seen that happen before. As I got closer to the tower, my dad's old turquoise necklace started feeling warm against my skin. I always wear it. It's the only thing I have left of him since he disappeared near here when I was 12. The warmth wasn't painful, just noticeable, like the stone was trying to tell me something. The ground felt weird under my boots, too. Every few steps, I'd feel these little vibrations, like someone was running heavy machinery deep underground. But there's nothing like that around here. Devil's Tower is solid rock, formed by ancient volcanoes. At least, that's what we tell the tourists. When I reached the north face of the tower, I stopped dead in my tracks. The rock face had these perfect circles carved into it. Dozens of them, each about the size of a dinner plate. They definitely weren't there yesterday. I've climbed every inch of this tower, and I know every crack and bump by heart. I pulled out my notebook to document what I was seeing. But when I tried to write, my pencil started moving on its own. Instead of words, it drew these spiraling patterns that made my eyes hurt to look at. I dropped the pencil like it was on fire. Get it together, Amanda, I told myself. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just stress or lack of sleep. See, I'm not just any park ranger. My mum was Lakota, and she grew up hearing stories about this place from her grandmother. Stories that the Park Service doesn't put in their brochures. Stories about tall beings that lived inside the rock, about times when the tower would wake up and strange things would happen. I used to think they were just legends. Even with my anthropology degree, I tried to look at everything scientifically. But standing there that morning, feeling the ground pulse beneath my feet and watching birds fly in perfect circles around the tower's peak, I couldn't ignore what my ancestors had been trying to tell us all along. The tower wasn't just a rock formation, it was something else entirely. And after 25 years of silence, it was waking up again. My radio crackled with static, then went dead. My compass started spinning like crazy when I pointed it at the tower. Even my digital watch was showing the wrong time, jumping forward and backward randomly. I should have reported it all to my supervisor right away. That's what the protocol said. But I knew what would happen. They'd smile and nod, maybe send someone out to take a look, then file it away as unusual but natural geological activity, just like they did with every other report I'd made about strange things happening here. But this was different. This felt personal, like the tower was, trying to tell me something specific, something about my father. As the sun climbed higher, I noticed something else. From certain angles, the tower looked wrong, like its proportions had shifted slightly overnight. It was subtle. Most people wouldn't even notice. But I'd spent years staring at this rock, and I knew something had changed. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to file another report that would get buried in some filing cabinet. I was going to figure this out myself. Little did I know that this decision would lead me to discover the truth about my father's disappearance and uncover a secret that had been hidden inside Devil's Tower for thousands of years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I need to tell you about what I found in those perfect circular holes and why I'll never look at solid rock the same way again. The next few days, I kept my discoveries to myself. Every morning before the tourists arrived, I'd head out to document more strange things. And let me tell you, there was plenty to document. Those circular holes I found, they went deep, really deep. I dropped a pebble into one and never heard it hit bottom. When I shined my flashlight down there, the beam just disappeared into darkness. The weird part was, these holes went in at angles that didn't make sense. Some went sideways into the rock, others curved upward. That's not how erosion works. That's not how anything works. On Wednesday, I found something that made my blood run cold. Near the base of the tower, there were fresh petroglyphs, ancient rock carvings, that I swear weren't there before. They showed tall, thin figures with long arms and legs climbing out of cracks in the earth. The rain must have washed away some dirt to reveal them, but they looked new, like someone had carved them recently. My dad's necklace got warmer whenever I was near these carvings. Sometimes it got so hot I had to take it off. I started wondering if he'd seen the same things before he disappeared. Maybe that's why he never came back from his hike that day. The wildlife was acting stranger by the day. Birds flew in those, perfect circles until they dropped from exhaustion. Deer would stand completely still for hours, just staring at the tower. Even the insects had gone quiet. No crickets at night, no bees during the day. Just this heavy, waiting silence. Thursday afternoon, I was checking the restricted climbing area when my radio picked up voices, but not the usual ranger chatter. These were fragments of conversations in languages I didn't recognize. Some sounded ancient, like they were coming from very far away, or very long ago. That's when I remembered something my grandmother used to say. The tower remembers everything. It holds all the voices of those who came before. I thought it was just poetry back then. Now I wasn't so sure. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my dad, about the last time I saw him. He'd been acting strange for weeks before he disappeared, spending all his free time near the tower, taking notes in a journal he wouldn't let anyone read. Mom said he was obsessed. Now I understood why. Friday morning, I decided to check the park's old records. In a dusty storage room, I found a box of incident reports from the 1970s. My hands shook as I pulled out a file from 1977, the year my dad vanished. But it wasn't his disappearance report. It was from 3 months earlier, written by another ranger named Bill Morrison. He described the exact same things I was seeing: circular holes, strange vibrations, equipment failures. His last entry said he was going to investigate some unusual activity on the north face. Bill Morrison disappeared too, just like my dad, just like 7 other people over the last 100 years, all park employees or researchers, always during times when these phenomena occurred. I was so focused on the files that I almost missed the sound at first. A low hum coming from somewhere inside the tower. It wasn't loud, but you could feel it in your bones, like the tower was breathing. That evening, just as the sun was setting, I saw something that changed everything. The tower's surface, that solid rock that had stood for millions of years, became transparent in places. Just for a few seconds, but long enough for me to see what looked like tunnels inside. Tunnels that shouldn't exist, and moving through those tunnels were shadows, tall, impossibly thin shadows. I knew then that all the tribal stories were true. The tower wasn't solid. It never had been. It was hollow, and something lived inside. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Saturday night, I made camp near the tower instead of going home. I told myself I was just being thorough, doing my job. But really, I needed to know. I needed to understand what happened. To my dad, as darkness fell, the humming grew louder. The ground vibrated more strongly. And then, just after midnight, I saw them for the first time. The skinwalkers. They emerged from the rock itself, their bodies shifting and changing like smoke made solid. They were studying our world, collecting samples, watching and learning. And they knew I was there. They knew I was watching them. But here's the thing that terrified me most. When one of them turned to look directly at me, I recognized something in its movements. Something familiar, something that reminded me of my father. I froze when that thing looked at me. Its face wasn't really a face, more like a blank surface that kept shifting, trying to form features. But the way it tilted its head, the way its shoulders moved. I'd seen my dad make those exact same movements 1,000 times. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. But I forced myself to stay still, to keep watching. There were 5 of them, moving around the base of the tower like they were searching for something. They were incredibly tall, maybe 8 or 9 feet, with arms and legs that seemed too long for their bodies. Their skin looked like it was made of shadows that kept rippling and changing. One of them bent down and touched the ground. Where its fingers made contact, the solid earth turned liquid for a moment, then solid again. Another one was collecting rocks and plants, putting them into what looked like holes in its own body. They communicated without talking. Sometimes they'd face each other and their whole bodies would vibrate slightly, like tuning forks. Whatever they were saying, it was beyond human hearing. I carefully reached for my camera. I had to document this, even if no one would believe me. As I raised it to take a picture, all 5 of them stopped moving at once. Their heads all turned toward me in perfect sync. The one that moved like my dad started walking in my direction. Not walking exactly, more like flowing across the ground. As it got closer, its face began to change, becoming more human-like, more familiar. My dad's necklace started burning against my chest. Not warm anymore, actually burning. But I couldn't move, couldn't run. I could only watch as this thing approached. When it was about 10 feet away, it stopped. The surface of its face rippled, and suddenly I was looking at features I recognized. My dad's eyes, his nose, his slight smile that always tilted more to the left, but the proportions were wrong. Everything was too long, too stretched out, like someone had tried to recreate a human face from a description without understanding human anatomy. Amanda. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. It wasn't quite my dad's voice. It had too many layers, like dozens of people speaking in unison. But buried in there, I could hear him. My throat was so dry I could barely speak. Dad! The thing tilted its head, that familiar gesture that was so painfully his. We knew you would come when the cycle began again, like we did, like others before us. Where have you been? My voice was shaking. We searched for you, for months. Inside, learning, becoming. The creature gestured toward the tower with those impossibly long fingers. They've been here so long, Amanda. Since before humans built cities, since before the first stories, waiting, watching, recording. Recording what? Everything, every civilization that rises and falls. Every species that comes and goes. They are librarians of a sort. The other skinwalkers had gone back to their tasks, ignoring us. One was now examining a bird that had fallen from the sky, its long fingers carefully extending each feather. Why did you leave us? I asked, tears running down my face. Why didn't you come back? The thing wearing my father's face looked sad, or at least it tried to. We can't come back. Not as we were. The knowledge changes you. The understanding of what this world really is, what's underneath everything you think is solid and real. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. He reached out one elongated hand toward me. But you could join us, learn what we know, see what we've seen. The tower is waking up again, Amanda. The 50-year cycle is complete. Soon others will come to study this iteration of your civilization, to record, to preserve, before the next change. What change? I whispered. The one that's coming, the one that always comes. Your species is at a crossroads again. He gestured at the tower. Come inside. Let us show you. Let us teach you what your ancestors knew but forgot, what we tried to warn you about. My hand moved toward his without my conscious control. The necklace burned hotter. That's when I remembered my grandmother's last words to me before she died. When the tower calls, child, you must choose. Knowledge or life, understanding or remaining. You can't have both. I understood now what she meant. My father had chosen knowledge. He'd chosen to understand, to see beyond the veil of what we call reality. But at what cost? The thing wearing my father's face waited patiently, that alien hand still extended toward me. Behind him, the tower hummed with ancient power, its surface occasionally flickering to show glimpses of the impossible architecture within. I had to choose. Join my father in this terrifying evolution, or stay human and never truly understand. What happened to him? The burning necklace against my chest felt like my grandmother's hand, warning me I had to make my choice. My hand was inches from his when the ground started shaking. Not like a normal earthquake. This was different. The earth was moving in waves like water. The awakening accelerates. The thing that used to be my dad said, "Choose now, Amanda. Time grows short." But something didn't feel right. My grandmother's necklace wasn't just hot anymore. It was pulsing, like a heartbeat. And with each pulse, I remembered more of her stories. Stories about tricksters, about beings that offered knowledge but took everything in return. "Wait," I said, pulling my hand back. "If you're really my dad, tell me something only he would know." The creature's face flickered like a TV with bad reception. "We were fishing at Miller's Pond. You caught your first base. You were so proud." "No," I interrupted. "We never went to Miller's Pond. We fished at Crystal Lake, and I never caught anything. I was terrible at fishing." The creature's face went blank for a moment. Then it smiled, but it wasn't my dad's smile anymore. It was something else entirely. "Clever girl," it said. But now the voice was different too. Older, colder. "Your bloodline always was perceptive." The shaking got worse. Cracks appeared in the ground around us. The other skinwalkers gathered closer, forming a circle. I realized I'd walked right into a trap. "What did you do with my father?" I demanded. "He is with us, part of the collective, as you will be." "You're lying." The creature's form began to shift, growing even taller. "We don't lie, we preserve. Your father came willingly, seeking answers, just as you have." Suddenly, the rock beneath me turned liquid. I started sinking. The skinwalkers moved closer, their vibrating bodies making the air hum with energy. That's when the necklace did something impossible. It flashed with brilliant blue light, creating a protective circle around me. The liquid rock hardened instantly. The creatures recoiled, making sounds like metal scraping against glass. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I ran. Behind me, I heard them pursuing. Not footsteps, but a rushing sound like wind through a tunnel. The ground kept trying to grab my feet, turning soft wherever I stepped, but the necklace kept pulsing with that blue light, keeping me one step ahead. I reached my jeep and fumbled for the keys. The engine wouldn't start at first. Electronics never work right when those things are around. On the third try, it roared to life. In my rearview mirror, I saw them standing at the edge of the parking area. They couldn't, or wouldn't, cross onto the asphalt. The one wearing my father's face raised a hand, and I heard its voice in my head. "The cycle continues. We will wait." I drove straight to the main ranger station and burst through the door. "We need to evacuate the park," I told my supervisor. "There's going to be a major geological event." He looked at me like I was crazy. "Amanda, what are you talking about?" I knew I couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet. "There are deep fissures forming around the tower. Unusual seismic activity. Please, just trust me on this." Maybe it was the panic in my voice, or maybe he'd noticed some of the strange things himself. But he made the call. Within hours, Devil's Tower was closed to visitors. That night, from the town of Sundance 10 miles away, we saw the lights. pillars of blue energy shooting up from the tower into the sky. The official report called it an unusual atmospheric phenomenon, possibly related to mineral deposits and electrical storms. But I knew better. The tower stayed closed for 3 months for geological assessment. When it reopened, everything looked normal. The circular holes were gone. No strange vibrations. No missing prairie dogs. Like nothing had ever happened. I transferred to Yellowstone the next month. I couldn't stay there anymore, couldn't keep looking at that tower and wondering if my father was really inside, or if that thing had been lying. But here's what haunts me. I found similar reports from other sacred sites around the world. Uluru in Australia, Mount Kailash in Tibet, Sedona in Arizona. Every 50 years, the same phenomena, the same disappearances, the same offers of knowledge. My grandmother's necklace still burns sometimes, usually when I'm near certain rock formations. And sometimes late at night I hear my father's voice in my dreams, not the twisted version that thing used, but his real voice. "Don't come looking for me, Amanda," he says. "But don't stop watching. They're not what they claim to be, and they're planning something big." I've spent 5 years researching, connecting the dots. The 50-year cycle is almost complete again. And this time, it's not just Devil's Tower that's waking up. They're all waking up, and I'm one of the few people who knows what that means. The question is, will anyone believe me in time? 5 years have passed since that night at Devil's Tower. 5 years of nightmares, of research, of trying to warn people who don't want to listen. I work at Yellowstone now, but I spend my free time tracking the pattern. Every sacred site, every mysterious rock formation, every place our ancestors said was special. They're all connected, and they're all on the same schedule. The 50-year cycle is almost complete again. The signs are starting, just like they did at Devil's Tower. Last week, the hot springs at Yellowstone changed color overnight. The scientists say it's just bacteria, unusual algae growth, but I've seen this before. The water is responding to something deep underground, something waking up. My office is covered with maps, photos, witness reports. Red strings connect the dots between locations. Devil's Tower, Sedona, Mount Shasta, Uluru, Easter Island. All the places where people have vanished during these geological events. I thought I was crazy at first. Maybe I still am. But then the letters started coming. Letters from other rangers, other researchers, people who've seen things they can't explain. A geologist in Arizona who watched solid rock behave like liquid. A tour guide in Australia who saw shadows moving. Inside Uluru, a monk in Tibet who recorded the same low-frequency hum. Coming from Mount Kailash, we formed a network. We call ourselves the Watchers. Not very creative, I know, but it fits. We watch. We document, we prepare, because something is coming. Something bigger than what happened at Devil's Tower. The Skinwalkers, or whatever they really are, they're not just studying us anymore. They're preparing for something. The Great Change, my father mentioned. 3 nights ago, my grandmother's necklace started burning again. Not just warm, but actually leaving marks on my skin. I knew what that meant. They were close. I was alone. In my cabin when I heard it. That familiar humming sound, not from outside, from below, from deep beneath the earth. I grabbed my emergency bag, the one I've kept packed for 5 years, and went outside. The moon was full, casting strange shadows across the forest. And there, at the edge of the trees, I saw them, 3 skinwalkers. But different from the ones at Devil's Tower, these were more refined. More human-looking, like they'd been practicing. Amanda Wolfson, one of them said. Its voice was almost perfectly human, almost. "We've been looking for you." "Why?" I asked, my hand instinctively going to the necklace. "Because you're the key. Your bloodline, your grandmother knew, your father discovered, and now you understand." "I don't understand anything," I said. "Yes, you do. You understand that we're not what we claim to be. You understand that this isn't about knowledge or preservation. It's about preparation. Preparation for what? The creature smiled with its too perfect face. For the harvest. My blood went cold. All those missing people. All those preserved minds. They weren't being saved or educated. They were being collected. Every 50 years, we gather the best minds, the strongest spirits, the ones who can see beyond the veil, the creature continued. We take them inside, merge them with our consciousness, use their understanding to refine our methods. Why? What are you preparing for? For when your species reaches the tipping point, when you either evolve or destroy yourselves, we'll be ready to guide the process. Guide it how? By replacing you, bit by bit, person by person, until humanity is something different, something that serves our purposes. I backed away slowly. My father figured this out, didn't he? That's why you couldn't just let him go. Your father was brilliant. He decoded too much too quickly, but he's part of us now, as you will be. That's when I remembered something. The blue light from my necklace at Devil's Tower. It had hurt them, driven them back. I gripped the necklace tight and concentrated, trying to remember my grandmother's prayers, her old songs. The necklace flared with blue light. The creatures screeched and recoiled. This is why we needed your bloodline, one of them hissed. You carry the old protections, the original defenses against us. I ran, again. But this time I wasn't running away. I was running toward something, toward the truth I'd been seeking for 5 years. I made it to my car, to my computer, to my network of watchers. Within hours, I had sent out everything I knew, every piece of evidence, every theory, every warning. The creatures are patient. They've been doing this for millennia, but they made one mistake. They let me escape. Twice. Now I know what they are. I know what they want. And I know how to fight them. The blue light in my grandmother's necklace isn't just some family heirloom, it's a weapon, an ancient defense that our ancestors knew about and passed down through generations. The 50-year cycle ends next month. Sites all over the world are showing the same signs that Devil's Tower did 5 years ago. The skinwalkers are preparing for their biggest harvest yet, but this time we'll be ready for them. This time we know how to fight back, and I have a feeling I'm going to see my real father again soon. Not the twisted thing wearing his face, but the part of him that's still fighting from the inside. The part that sent me that warning in my dreams. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that consciousness can't truly be absorbed. Not completely. Somewhere in that collective, all those missing people are still themselves, still fighting, and we're going to get them back. All of them. The war for humanity's future is about to begin. And it starts at Devil's Tower, where it all began for me 5 years ago. This time I'm not running away. This time I'm going inside. I stand at the base of Devil's Tower now, 5 years after I first ran from this place. But this time, I'm not. Alone. 30 watchers from around the world stand with me, each wearing protective symbols from their own cultures. The tower is pulsing with that familiar blue energy. The ground trembles. The skinwalkers are already emerging from the rock face, but they seem confused. They didn't expect resistance. Ready? I ask the others. Ready, they reply in unison. I grip my grandmother's necklace. It's burning hot, but I don't let go. Around me, my fellow watchers hold their own protections. A Maori jade pendant, an Aboriginal carved stone, a Tibetan prayer wheel, a Native American medicine bundle. The skinwalkers approach, led by the creature wearing my father's face. You cannot stop the harvest, it says. We are eternal. We are patient. Maybe, I say, but we're not alone anymore, and we're not afraid. I close my eyes and begin to sing my grandmother's prayer song. One by one, the other watchers join in with their own sacred words. Our different languages blend together, creating a harmony that makes the air itself vibrate. The necklace flares with brilliant light. Not just mine. All our protective items begin to glow. The light connects between us, forming a web of ancient power. The skinwalkers screech and retreat back toward the tower, but something unexpected happens. The light from our protections begins to reach inside the rock itself, into those impossible tunnels, and then I hear it. Voices, human voices, calling out from inside the tower. Amanda, it's my father's voice, his real voice. We're still here, all of us. Help us. The Skinwalker's leader turns to me, and for just a moment, its alien features flicker. I see my real father's face underneath, fighting to break through. Amanda, he gasps. The light. It's breaking their hold. Keep singing. We sing louder. The light grows brighter. The tower itself begins to crack, and then, one by one, people start emerging from the rock. Not skinwalkers, real humans, confused, frightened, but alive. My father stumbles out, aged but himself again. Dad! I run to him, still singing, still holding the burning necklace. He hugs me tight. You did it, baby girl. You figured it out. The old protections, they knew. Our ancestors knew how to fight them. Around us, more people emerge. Rangers, researchers, tourists, all the missing souls from the last 50 years of harvests. The skinwalkers are retreating deeper into the tower, their forms becoming less and less human as our light drives them back. They're not gone, my father warns. They'll never be gone completely. They're too old, too deeply rooted in this world. I know, I say, but now we know how to fight them, and we're not alone. As the sun rises over Devil's Tower, we stand together, the rescued and the rescuers. The tower is quiet now, just a rock formation again, but we know better. We know what sleeps inside, what waits for the next cycle. But we'll be ready, because now we remember what our ancestors knew. Now we understand why they built their sacred sites where they did, why they passed down their protective symbols and songs. They weren't just pretty traditions, they were weapons, and the war isn't over. It's just beginning, but at least now we know how to fight. My name is Martin Blackfeather, and I've been a park ranger in Glacier National Park for 30 years, but nothing in all that time prepared me for what I found in the summer of 1981. It started like any other morning. I woke up in my cabin at the edge of the park, made some coffee, and looked out at the mountains. The peaks were sharp against the blue sky, their snow caps shining in the early sun. At 7,000 feet up, the air was thin but clean. It smelled like pine trees and melting snow. I loved these quiet mornings. Just me, the whistling marmots, and the sound of streams far below. But something felt different that day. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. As I hiked my usual trail through the wildflower meadows, I noticed things weren't right. The birds were too quiet. The deer I usually saw drinking at Miller Creek were gone. Even the chipmunks, always chattering and running around, had vanished. Then I saw the trees, deep claw marks scratched into the bark, way too high for any bear to reach. These marks cut deep into the hard wood, like something with incredible strength had dragged its claws down the trunk. I've seen bear marks, mountain lion marks, but these were different. The temperature dropped suddenly. One minute it was a warm summer morning. The next, it felt like winter had returned. 20 degrees colder in just minutes, even though the sky was still clear. That's not normal, not even in the mountains. I knelt down to examine some tracks in the mud near a creek. My heart started beating faster. The prints were huge, bigger than any bear paw I'd ever seen. But they weren't bear tracks. They looked almost human, like someone with giant feet had walked through here, but the stride was all wrong. Whatever made these tracks walked differently than any person. I pulled out my notebook and started sketching the prints. That's when I noticed something that made the hair on my neck stand up. The tracks didn't just pass through the area. They made a complete circle around where I was kneeling. Whatever left these prints had walked all the way around me while I was working, and I never heard a thing. The mountains had always been my home. My people, the Blackfeet, have lived here for thousands of years. We have stories about these peaks, about the spirits that live here. As a ranger, I was taught to think scientifically, to look for logical explanations. But standing there in that meadow, looking at those impossible tracks, I remembered my grandmother's words. The mountains keep their own secrets, Martin, and some secrets are meant to stay hidden. I should have listened to her. The next morning I got a call on my radio about a dead moose up near Granite Ridge. Nothing unusual about that. Animals die in the mountains all the time. But when I arrived at the scene, my stomach turned. This wasn't just a dead moose. Something had torn apart a 200-pound bull moose like it was made of paper. The body was ripped open with clean, precise cuts, not the messy work of wolves or a bear. Whatever killed this moose knew exactly what it was doing. I was examining the carcass when my radio crackled. But instead of dispatch, strange sounds came through, deep guttural noises that made my skin crawl. They weren't static or interference. They sounded alive. Dispatch, this is Ranger Blackfeather. Are you reading me? More of those sounds, like growling but different, like something trying to speak. I switched off my radio and looked around. The forest was too quiet again. Even the wind had stopped. That's when I remembered my brother, Thomas. He died 5 years ago in these mountains. A climbing accident, they said. But he'd told me something the night before he died. Martin, he said, I saw something up there today. Something that shouldn't exist. I never got to ask him what he meant. Over the next few days, I found more strange things. Mountain goats gathered in places they'd never go, like they were running from something. Eagles circled but wouldn't land. And the strangest thing, my grandmother's old compass, the one that had worked perfectly for 50 years, started pointing in the wrong direction whenever I got near certain spots. Then I found the research. Camp 4 scientists from the university had been studying glaciers up here. Their tents were shredded, equipment scattered everywhere, but no bodies, no blood, just their cameras smashed to pieces and their notebooks with the last few pages torn out. I radioed it in and waited for the search teams. While I waited, I looked around more carefully. That's when I saw it, a tuft of coarse, dark hair caught on a branch. It wasn't from any animal I knew. It was too thick, too long. I put it in an evidence bag, but my hands were shaking because I was starting to think about the old stories my grandmother used to tell. Stories about the hairy ones who lived in the high places, who walked like men but weren't men. Stories I'd always thought were just legends. As I stood there in that ruined camp, the temperature dropped again, fast. My breath came out in white clouds, and then I heard it, a sound that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human. It echoed off the mountains, making it impossible to tell where it came from. I knew I should leave. Every instinct told me to get back to my truck and drive away. But I'm a ranger. It's my job to protect this park and the people in it. So I stayed. I kept searching for clues. That was my second mistake. My first was not listening to my grandmother. The melting ice was revealing things that had been hidden for thousands of years. Up near Eagle Peak, recent landslides had exposed a rock wall I'd never seen before. When I climbed up to check it, out I found something that made me forget how to breathe. Pictographs, ancient drawings carved into the stone. My people had made these marks long ago, telling stories for future generations. But these drawings showed something I'd never seen in any museum or history book. A tall figure, standing upright like a man, but much bigger. Its arms were too long, its body covered in what looked like fur. And in every drawing, it was watching. Always watching. I touched the stone, tracing the outlines with my finger. The rock was ice cold, even in the afternoon sun. That night, I had the dream again. I'd been having it for weeks now, running through snow-covered forests, something chasing me. But this time, I saw what was chasing me. It was the creature from the pictographs. I woke up sweating, even though my cabin was freezing. Something was scratching at my door. I grabbed my flashlight and my rifle, but when I opened the door, nothing was there. Just long scratches in the wood, too high for any normal animal. The next day, I decided to check out some caves that had appeared after the ice melted. The biggest one was about a half-mile up from the pictographs. As I got closer, my compass started spinning wildly. The metal actually felt warm in my hand. Strange symbols were carved around the cave entrance. Not Blackfeet symbols, something older, and the smell coming from inside. It wasn't the usual damp cave smell. It was musky, animal-like, but mixed with something else, something that smelled almost human. I was about to go inside when I heard a branch snap behind me. I turned around fast, rifle ready, nothing there, but the birds had gone silent again. Then I saw it, just for a second, a shadow moving between the trees, much too big to be a person. It moved fast, but not like an animal running, more like it was gliding from tree to tree. My radio crackled. "Martin, you there? We need you back at base." I grabbed it. "Yeah, I'm here. Listen, I found something." The radio went dead. Not static, just dead, like someone had crushed it from the inside. I started backing away from the cave, keeping my eyes on the trees. That's when I noticed something that scared me more than anything else. The ground around the cave entrance was covered in bones. Not ancient bones, fresh ones, deer, elk, even what looked like bear bones, all picked clean. And among them, glinting in the fading light, were things that didn't belong in the wilderness. A wristwatch, a pair of broken glasses, a wedding ring. Turned and ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I ran like I hadn't run since I was a kid, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Behind me, I heard that sound again. Not quite animal, not quite human, but this time, I swear it sounded like laughter. When I got back to my truck, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. I looked in the rearview mirror as I drove away, and there, standing at the edge of the trees, was a figure, tall, covered in dark fur. Watching me leave, I knew then that everything was about to change. The mountains had kept their secret for thousands of years. Now that secret knew I was looking for it, and it was looking for me too. The next few days, I couldn't shake what I'd seen. I kept telling myself it was a trick of the light, maybe a bear standing on its hind legs. But I knew better. Bears don't laugh. Bears don't leave wedding rings by cave entrances. I was filling out reports at the ranger station when my boss, Jim Hawkins, walked in. "Martin, what's this about you requesting aerial surveys of the North Face? The wildlife patterns are all wrong," I said. "And after that research team disappeared, they didn't disappear. They probably got lost in the storm, and we'll find them when the snow melts." He looked at my desk, covered with maps and old Blackfeet texts. "What are you really looking for?" I almost told him. Almost said the words. "I think there's something out there, something our ancestors knew about." Instead, I said, "Just doing my job." That afternoon, the clouds rolled in fast. Mountain weather can change in minutes, but this was different. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in half an hour. Snow started falling in July. My radio crackled with emergency calls. Hikers were trapped on Eagle Peak right near those caves. I had to go back, whether I wanted to or not. The storm hit full force as I drove up the mountain road. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Snow was already a foot deep and climbing. I parked as far as I could go and started hiking. That's when I heard the knocking. It started soft. Tap, 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 tap. Then it came from another direction. Then another. Like something was using the trees to send messages. The pattern was too regular to be random branches hitting each other. I kept moving toward the hiker's last known position. The wind was howling now, but through it, I could hear those Strange sounds again. Not animal, not human, something else. Then I fell into the snow. No, not into, through. I landed hard in some kind of cave or tunnel. My flashlight had fallen somewhere in the snow above. In the darkness, I could hear breathing. Not mine. I fumbled for my backup light with shaking hands. When I finally clicked it on, I wished I hadn't. The walls were covered with paintings. Not old ones, fresh ones. They showed humans in park ranger uniforms. They showed our ranger station. They showed my cabin. Whatever lived here had been watching us, and then I saw the tools. Stones shaped into blades, wooden clubs, things made from metal that looked suspiciously like parts from our missing equipment. Something moved in the shadows ahead, something big. I turned my light toward it, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. Over 10 feet tall, covered in dark, matted fur. Its face was almost human, but not quite. And its eyes, those eyes held intelligence, real intelligence. We stared at each other for what felt like hours, but was probably seconds. Then it did something that scared me more than if it had attacked. It spoke, not in English, not in any language. I knew, but the sounds had rhythm, pattern, meaning. It was trying to communicate. I remembered something my grandmother taught me, a gesture of peace from our old ways. Slowly, carefully, I made the sign with my hands. The creature tilted its head. Then, just as slowly, it made the same gesture. Back my heart was racing, but not from fear anymore. This was a moment no other human had experienced. First contact with a species we'd thought was just legend. Then I heard voices above, the lost hikers calling for help. The creature heard them too. It looked at me, then up at the cave entrance. It was warning me about something. I knew I had to make a choice. I could try to capture evidence of this creature, become famous, have my name in science books, or I could keep it secret. The creature reached down and picked up something from the cave floor. It was a small carved stone, shaped like the figures in the pictographs. It held it out to me, a gift, or maybe a message. I took it and nodded. The creature stepped back into the shadows and disappeared. When I climbed out to help the hikers, the storm was already breaking. We made it back safely, and I filed my report, but I didn't mention the cave. I didn't mention the creature. Some secrets are meant to be kept. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, and sometimes the old ways are the wisest ways. The hikers were safe, but I couldn't stop thinking about what happened in that cave. The carved stone sat heavy in my pocket, warm against my leg, even in the cold. 3 days later, another storm hit. This one was worse, a full blizzard in the middle of summer. The weather service couldn't explain it. I knew I had to go back. Up the mountain to check on the remote weather stations. Bad decision. Halfway up Eagle Peak, the storm turned violent. Snow coming sideways, wind screaming through the trees. I could barely see my own hands. Then my snowmobile died. Just stopped, like something had drained all the power from it. I tried my radio. Dead. My GPS. Dead. Even my flashlight flickered and went out. Though I'd just put in fresh batteries that morning, the temperature was dropping fast. I needed shelter, or I'd freeze to death. Through the white chaos, I spotted what looked like a cave entrance, not the same one as before. This was higher up the mountain. I stumbled inside, shaking snow off my jacket. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized this wasn't just a cave, it was a tunnel system. And it wasn't natural. Someone or something had carved these tunnels. I had to keep going deeper to escape the wind. That's when I started seeing things that shouldn't exist. Sleeping areas padded with pine branches and fur, stone tools arranged on natural shelves, paintings on the walls showing the history of these creatures, how they'd lived here long before humans came. And then I saw the bones. Human bones. Old ones from settlers maybe, newer ones too. Hikers who'd gone missing over the years. They were arranged respectfully, almost like in a burial ground. I heard movement behind me and spun around. There it was, the same creature from before, but this time it wasn't alone. 5 more stepped out of the shadows, a whole family. One was clearly older, with silver in its fur. 2 were smaller, teenagers maybe. They all had those same intelligent eyes. The first one, the one I'd met before, stepped forward. It pointed at the carved stone in my pocket, then at the walls around us. It was trying to tell me something. I looked closer at the cave paintings. They showed these creatures living peacefully until humans came with guns and traps. They showed families being hunted, killed. They showed the survivors fleeing higher into the mountains, learning to hide, to avoid contact. But they also showed something else. Sometimes a human would come who was different, who showed respect, who kept their secret. Those humans were marked with a special symbol, the same symbol on the stone in my pocket. The older creature approached me. Its movements were slow, careful. It reached out one massive hand and touched my chest right over my heart. Then it pointed to the cave entrance. The storm was getting worse. If I went back out there, I might die. But if I stayed, I'd be crossing a line no human had crossed before. That's when I heard it. A crack, then a rumble. Avalanche. The entrance to the cave was about to be buried. The creatures moved fast. The younger ones grabbed my arms, not roughly but firmly. They knew these tunnels. I didn't. If I wanted to live, I had to trust them. We ran through the tunnels as the mountain shook above us. Snow and rocks crashed down, sealing the way we'd come. But they kept pulling me forward deeper into their world. Finally, we stopped in a large chamber. Firelight flickered from some kind of natural chimney. The walls were covered with generations of their history. And in the center of the room was something that took my breath away. A map. Not paper, carved in stone. It showed the entire mountain range, but with details no human map had ever captured. Secret valleys, hidden caves, underground rivers. And marked clearly were the territories. Human spaces and their spaces. The older creature pointed to areas on the map, then to me. It was showing me the boundaries, the places where our worlds could overlap, and the places that must remain theirs alone. I understood. This wasn't just about them staying hidden. It was about balance, about 2 intelligent species learning to share the same mountains. For the next 6 hours, while the blizzard raged outside, I sat with these beings that shouldn't exist. They showed me their tools, their art, their ways of surviving in the harsh mountain environment, and I shared what I could about my world, though I sensed they already knew more about us than we'd ever know about them. When the storm finally broke, they led me to a different exit, one that opened near a ranger trail. Before I left, the older creature gave me something else, a larger stone, carved with intricate symbols, a map of the safe passages through their territory. As I stepped out into the morning sun, I turned back. They were all standing in the cave entrance, watching. The first creature, the one who'd saved me, raised its hand in that gesture of peace my grandmother had taught me. I raised my hand in return. Then they melted back into the shadows, and I was alone on the mountainside. Knew what I had to do now. I had a choice to make that would affect not just my life, but the future of these mountains and all who lived in them. When I got back to the ranger station, everything looked different. Normal. People doing paperwork, drinking coffee, complaining about the weird weather. They had no idea what lived just miles away in those mountains. Jim was waiting for me. "Where the hell have you been, Martin? Search and rescue has been looking for you all night." "Got caught in the storm," I said. "Found shelter in a cave." He stared at me. "You look different. You okay?" I thought about the stone map in my pocket, about the trust those creatures had shown me. "Yeah, I'm fine. But I need to talk to you about something." I spread out the official park maps on his desk. "We need to update these, mark some areas as off-limits." "Why?" "Unstable ground. The recent earthquakes and avalanches have made these sections dangerous. I pointed to the areas the creatures had shown me, their territories. We should redirect all hiking trails away from these zones. Jim frowned. That's a lot of territory to close off. The tourism board won't like it. It's that or risk more disappearances. He thought about it, then nodded. All right, draw up the proposal. But Martin, is there something you're not telling? Me? I looked him straight in the eye. Just trying to keep people safe, Jim. Over the next few months, I carefully rewrote the park maps, listed certain areas as geological hazards, rerouted trails, put up warning signs. The other rangers thought I was being overly cautious, but they followed the new guidelines. The disappearances stopped. The strange weather patterns calmed down. Wildlife returned to normal migration routes. It was like the whole mountain had breathed a sigh of relief. Sometimes, when I was alone on patrol, I'd find things. A perfect arrowhead left on a rock where I'd stopped for lunch. Fresh deer meat, wrapped in leaves outside my cabin after a hard winter storm. Once when I twisted my ankle miles from help, I found a walking stick leaning against a tree, right when I needed it most. They were watching, protecting, just as I was protecting them. Years passed. I grew older, slower. My hair went from black to white. Young rangers came and went, all following the maps I'd made, never questioning why certain areas were off limits. Then, in the spring of 2010, the doctors found the cancer, too advanced to treat. They gave me 6 months. I spent those months in my cabin watching the mountains change with the seasons one last time. I'd kept my promise. Their secret was safe. On my last morning, I woke to find something on my doorstep, a carved stone figure about a foot tall. It showed 2 beings standing side by side, one human, one not. Between them was the symbol for peace. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the careful carving. No human could have made this. The detail was too perfect, the stone too hard to work with normal tools. I smiled, even through the pain. They hadn't forgotten. That afternoon, my nephew found me in my chair, facing the mountains, the carved figure in my hands. I'd left instructions in my will: cremate me, scatter my ashes on Eagle Peak, right at the boundary line. But here's the thing about that carved figure. When they cleared out my cabin, it wasn't there. Searched everywhere. Never found it. The only physical proof I ever had of their existence had vanished like morning mist. Except it hadn't vanished. Not really. Because sometimes hikers report seeing something strange on Eagle Peak. A stone figure standing guard where the trails end and the forbidden territory begins. They take pictures, but the photos never come out clear. They try to get closer, but somehow always get turned around, lost, until they find themselves back on the safe paths. The mountains keep their secrets. The old ways protect what needs protecting. And somewhere up there, in the high places where humans rarely go, an ancient people live on, hidden in plain sight. My name was Martin Blackfeather. I was a park ranger for 30 years. I saw something impossible, made a choice, and kept a promise, and I'd do it all again. My name is Josephine Reynolds, but everyone calls me Joe. I work as a park ranger in the Okefenokee Swamp in Georgia, and I need to tell you about what happened to me in the summer of 1975. That morning started like any other. I pushed my canoe into the dark water just as the sun was coming up. The cypress trees around me looked like giants with long gray beards. That's what we call the Spanish moss hanging from their branches. The swamp was beautiful in its own spooky way, with fog floating over the water like ghosts. I was there to check water levels after the recent floods. It's part of my job to make sure the swamp stays healthy. I paddled quietly through the channels I knew by heart, writing notes in my waterproof notebook. The swamp is never quiet. There's always something making noise. Frogs croaking, birds calling, insects buzzing. It's like nature's own orchestra that never stops playing. But that morning, as I turned into a remote channel few people knew about, something strange happened. Everything went silent, not normal silent, like when a predator is nearby. This was different. It was like someone had switched off all the sounds of the swamp. No frogs, no birds, not even the buzz of mosquitoes around my head. Then the fog came. Now, fog in the Okefenokee is normal, but this fog was thick, so thick. I could barely see past the front of my canoe. It rolled across the water like a white blanket covering everything. I kept paddling, but slower now, being careful not to hit any cypress knees. Those are the woody bumps that stick up from the water around the big trees. They looked extra creepy in the fog, like fingers reaching up from under the water. That's when I noticed the water was acting strange. I've spent enough time in swamps to know how water moves. It follows currents, makes little swirls around obstacles. But this water was moving in perfect circles, going against the current. Round and round like something big was swimming underneath, making whirlpools. I dipped my testing kit in the water. The swamp water here is usually acidic. That's normal, it's from all the dead plants. But my tests showed this water was alkaline. That's not right at all. And when I looked closer, I could see dead plants floating around my canoe. Something had killed them. And recently, as I paddled forward, the plants in the water kept moving apart in front of my canoe. Not like when you push through them, more like something under the water was clearing a path for me, or maybe following me. Then came the smell. Now swamps always smell a bit like rot. That's just dead plants breaking down. But this was different. Mixed in with the normal swamp smell was something else. Something metallic like pennies, and it was getting stronger. I knew then that I should turn back. My gut was telling me something was very wrong in this part of the swamp, but I'm a scientist, and scientists investigate strange things. I wish now that I had listened to my gut. I kept going forward into that thick fog, toward whatever was waiting. For me in the mist, I should probably tell you a bit about myself. I'm 34 years old, and I used to be a marine biologist. That's someone who studies ocean life. My dark hair is cut short because long hair and swamp work don't mix. After spending years in the sun and weather, my face shows it. 3 years ago, I was on a research boat in the Gulf of Mexico when a bad storm hit. The boat flipped over. Everyone else died, including Matthew, who was more than just my research partner. He was the man I loved. I was the only one who made it out alive. Matthew gave me this diving knife I always carry. It's made of titanium, super strong and never rusts. After the accident, I couldn't go back to ocean research. Too many memories. So I joined the Park Service and ended up here in the Okefenokee. People think I'm brave because I patrol alone, but the truth is, water has started to scare me. I've been having nightmares about drowning. Strange for someone who spends every day in a swamp, right? For weeks now, I'd been finding dead animals throughout the swamp. Not normal dead. These animals looked wrong somehow. My bosses said it was probably pollution from the paper mills upstream. But I knew better. I'd seen pollution kills before. This was different. As I paddled deeper into that foggy channel, my grandmother's old stories came back to me. She was Cajun, from Louisiana, and she used to tell me about swamp spirits and creatures that lived in the dark water. I'd always thought they were just stories to scare kids. Now I wasn't so sure. That's when I found the fishing boat. It was half sunk, tilted sideways in the water. I paddled closer to check it out. The bottom of the boat had a huge hole punched through it. Not torn or broken, punched, like something strong had pushed right through the metal from underneath. I grabbed my radio to report it. Base, this is Joe. Found an abandoned boat in Sector 7. Static, then something else. It sounded like gurgling, like someone trying to talk underwater, and beneath that whispers that made the hair on my neck stand up. Base, do you copy? More. Static, more gurgling. I turned the radio off. Dead fish started floating up around my canoe, lots of them. Their bodies were twisted, bent in ways fish shouldn't bend, like something had squeezed them too hard. I paddled to a muddy bank to get a better look around. That's when I saw the marks in the mud. Big, round dents, like something huge had crawled out of the water. The dents were fresh. Water was still seeping into them. My compass started acting crazy. The needle spun around and around like it couldn't find north. I'd never seen it do that before. There was no storm, no power lines nearby, nothing that should mess with a compass. Then the water got cold, really cold. In the middle of a Georgia summer, the swamp water turned ice cold. Steam rose. Up where the cold water met the warm air, I noticed something shiny caught on a low branch. I paddled over and pulled it free. It was a scale, like from a fish or reptile, but huge, bigger than a dinner plate. When I held it up to the light, it shimmered with colors like a rainbow. I'd never seen anything like it. That's when something bumped my canoe from underneath. The hit was hard enough to almost tip me over. This part of the swamp was shallow, too shallow for big gators. Whatever hit me was big, and it wasn't supposed to be here. I steadied myself and looked down into the dark water. Nothing, just my own reflection staring back at me. Then I saw the tackle box on a tiny island nearby. It looked new, not weathered. Inside I found fishing gear and some photos. The pictures showed something large, moving under the water. Just a dark shape, but massive. On the back of one photo, someone had written, "It's real, God help us." The sun was starting to set. That's when the water began to glow. Not everywhere, just in spots. Like someone had dropped glow sticks in the swamp. The light pulsed in patterns, almost like it was trying to hypnotize me. I couldn't look away. I knew then that I was in serious trouble. Whatever was in this swamp with me, it wasn't just an animal. It was something else, something smart, and it knew I was here. Then I saw it. At first it was just a shadow moving under my canoe. But this shadow was huge, at least 30 feet long. As it passed beneath me, I could make out more details. It had a long, snake-like body, but with arms or tentacles, I couldn't tell which. The whole thing moved like it was one creature, but also like it was many creatures working together. The thing rose up from the water about 20 feet away, just its head and neck at first. In the fading light, I could see scaly skin that looked both reptilian and somehow human. But it was those eyes that really got me. Bright yellow, glowing like flashlights, and they were looking right at me. It was smart. I could see it in those eyes. This wasn't some dumb animal. It was thinking, planning. The creature started moving. The water around my canoe. Not splashing, but actually controlling the water, making it swirl and flow in ways that didn't make sense. Soon I was caught in a whirlpool of its making, being pulled in circles. I tried to paddle away, but it was like the thing knew the swamp better than I did. Every channel I tried to escape through, it would block. Every time I thought I found a way out, it would appear in front of me. It was herding me, pushing me toward a dead-end channel where fallen trees blocked the way. The creature kept doing this thing with lights under the water. The glowing would pulse in patterns that made my eyes heavy, made me want to stop paddling and just watch. I had to shake my head hard to break free from whatever spell it was trying to put on me. I grabbed Matthew's knife. When the thing came close again, I slashed at it. The blade caught its shoulder, if you could call it that. What came out wasn't normal blood. It was thick and dark, and when it hit the water started hissing and bubbling like acid. Steam rose up and I could smell something burning. That's when things got really weird. The creature made this sound, not quite a roar, more like a whistle, and suddenly parts of it started breaking off. Pieces of its body separated and swam away on their own, like each part had its own brain. Now I had 5 or 6 smaller versions of this thing circling my canoe. Then it started calling for help, in human voices. "Help me! Please, someone help!" It was using a woman's voice, coming from one direction. "Over here, I'm drowning!" A man's voice from another direction. The voices were perfect. If I hadn't seen this thing, I would have sworn there were real people out there in trouble, but I knew better. This creature was trying to confuse me, make me paddle toward its main body. I kept moving, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. But everywhere I turned, there it was. It knew every shortcut, every hidden channel. It had probably been living in this swamp for hundreds of years. That's when it hit me. All those stories my grandmother told me. All those people who went missing in the Okefenokee over the years. People always blamed it on getting lost, or alligators or quicksand. But it wasn't any of those things. It was this creature. This thing had been hunting in these waters for generations, and now it was hunting me. Night fell fast in the swamp. With no moon and thick fog, it got so dark I couldn't see my own hands. The creature started ramming my canoe harder, each hit making the boat crack and splinter. Water started seeping in through the damaged wood. I had no choice. I paddled hard toward a tiny island I'd seen earlier, just a small patch of mud and grass sticking up from the water. As soon as I reached it, the creature smashed my canoe to pieces. Now I was stuck. The island was maybe 10 feet across. Not much, but it was land. The creature couldn't come up here. At least I hoped it couldn't. I remembered something from my biology training. Some plants in the swamp have oils that water creatures don't like. I gathered what I could find, wild mint, some pepper vines, and crushed them together. The smell was strong. I spread the mixture around the edge of my little island. It worked, sort of. The creature would swim close, then back away when it smelled the plants. But I knew this wouldn't last long. The fog got thicker, and soon I couldn't even see the stars. It was like being inside a dark box. All I could hear was the creature moving in the water around me, circling, waiting. I had 3 emergency flares in my vest. When the creature got too close, I lit one and held it out over the water. The bright red light made the thing scream, a sound like metal scraping on metal, and dive deep. Fire. It didn't like fire. I gathered dry grass and small sticks from the island. Using pages from my notebook, I made several small torches. When I lit them and placed them around the edge of the island, the creature stayed further back. But I didn't have much to burn, and dawn was still hours away. As the night wore on, the creature got more aggressive. It was learning that my fire supplies were running low. Its attacks came faster, testing my defenses. Then I noticed something. When it came near my torches, I could see a spot on its body that glowed brighter than the rest, right where what might be its heart would be. Or maybe its brain. Every time it moved, this spot pulsed with light. I had 1 flare left and Matthew's knife. I waited, watching that glowing spot, planning my move. The creature rushed the island again. This time, instead of just waving the flare, I threw it right at that glowing spot. The flare hit dead center. The creature thrashed wildly, churning the water into foam, but it wasn't done. It made that whistling sound again, and suddenly smaller versions of itself, maybe its babies, came swarming out of the water. Dozens of them, each about the size of a large dog, started crawling up onto my island. I was out of options. Then I remembered something about this type of island. The ground wasn't really solid. It was made of peat, dead plant matter that had built up over centuries. Peat has methane gas trapped inside, very flammable. Using my last match, I lit a torch and shoved it deep into the ground. The peat caught fire instantly. Within seconds, the whole island was burning from underneath, jets of flame shooting up through cracks in the earth. The small creatures fled back to the water. The big ones circled frantically as my island turned into a bonfire. I had to get off, but where could I go? Then I saw them, cypress trees growing close together in the water. Their roots made a maze under the surface. If I could swim through the roots, maybe I could hide, find my way to shore. I took a deep breath and dove into the dark water. Swimming blind through those roots was the scariest thing I've ever done. The water was full of ash from the burning. Island, I couldn't see anything. My lungs burned for air. Just when I thought I'd have to surface, I felt something grab my leg. Teeth, or claws, I couldn't tell which, sank deep into my flesh. The pain was incredible. I kicked hard with my other leg and felt it connect with something solid. The grip loosened just enough for me to pull free. I burst out of the water among thick reeds, gasping for air. Blood poured from my leg, or what was left of it. Everything below my knee was gone. Somehow I dragged myself through the shallow water to solid ground. Behind me, I could hear the creature thrashing in the water, but it couldn't follow me into the reeds. It was too big. I must have passed out, because the next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital. They told me a fisherman found me at dawn, half dead from blood loss. The doctors couldn't explain what happened to my leg. The bite marks didn't match any animal they knew. They kept asking if I was sure it wasn't an alligator. I just nodded and kept quiet. Who would believe me anyway? The Park Service closed that section of the swamp right after they found me. They told the public it was because of bacterial contamination, some kind of dangerous organism in the water. I never corrected them. Maybe it was better that way. I lost my job as a ranger, can't do much swamp patrolling with a prosthetic leg. But that turned out to be a blessing. Now I travel to wetlands all over the country, the Everglades, the Louisiana. Bayous, the Great Dismal Swamp. I'm not running away from what happened. I'm looking for others like it. You see, I've learned these creatures aren't just in the Okefenokee. They're in swamps and marshes everywhere, hiding in places people rarely go. I've created a warning system, a network of park rangers and wildlife officers who know what to look for. We use code words. Bacterial contamination means there's been a sighting. Water testing required means someone's gone missing. Alkaline. Anomaly means we've found evidence. Those rainbow scales, or the strange circular currents. I still have nightmares, but they're different now. I don't dream about drowning anymore. I dream about those yellow eyes watching me from dark water. Sometimes I wake up thinking I can hear that whistling sound it made. My grandmother was right about the swamp spirits, but they're not spirits at all. They're something else. Something ancient that was here long before us and will be here long after we're gone. If you ever find yourself in a swamp and things go quiet, too quiet, get out. If your compass spins, if the water moves wrong, if you smell that metallic scent mixed with rot, don't investigate. Just leave, and if you see lights pulsing under the water, beautiful and hypnotic, don't look. Paddle away as fast as you can. The swamps are beautiful places full of life and wonder. But they have their secrets, and some secrets have teeth. I still carry Matthew's knife, though it's more scratched and worn now. Sometimes I stand at the edge of a swamp, watching the water, and I wonder if it's watching back. My name is Josephine. Reynolds, I survived the swamp devil of the Okefenokee, and this is my warning to you. They're out there in the dark water, waiting. Stay out of the deep swamps. Please. My name is Victor Nakamura, and I've been a forest ranger in Allegheny National Forest for 3 years now. Before this, I worked search and rescue in New York City. But after 9/11, after losing my K9 partner Rex in a building collapse, I needed to get away from the noise, the crowds, the constant sirens. The forest seemed like the perfect place to find some peace. That morning in October 1989, I was out doing my usual rounds after a big storm had blown through. The air was thick with mist that clung to everything like wet cotton. You know those mornings when the fog is so heavy you can barely see 20 feet ahead. It was like that, but there was something else too, a feeling I couldn't shake. The old pines and hemlocks stood like giants in the mist. Their branches created this tunnel of green above my head, with drops of water falling every now and then, hitting my ranger hat with soft plops. The whole forest smelled like pine needles and wet earth, but every once in a while I'd catch this weird metallic smell, like copper pennies or blood. I was checking for storm damage along the trail when I noticed something odd. It was quiet, too quiet. Usually, when I walk through the forest, birds make a fuss, chirping warnings to each other, letting everyone know a human's coming through. But that morning, it was like they were holding their breath. Then I saw the branches. Now, I've seen plenty of storm damage. Wind doesn't break branches in neat, clean lines. It tears them, leaves jagged edges. But these branches, maybe 50 or 60 of them, were snapped clean off. All at the same height, about 7 feet up. Like something tall had walked through and just pushed them aside. I kept walking, trying to convince myself it was just storm damage I hadn't seen before. That's when I noticed the ground. All that rain from the night before had turned parts of the trail to mud, and in that mud were, well, they looked like footprints, but not normal ones. They were narrow, deep, with 3 toes, like a giant. A bird, but the spacing was all wrong. They were in a walking pattern, like something bipedal. My radio crackled with static, which was odd because we'd just gotten new equipment. I tried to call into the station, but all I got was more static. Then for just a second I heard what sounded like voices, fragments of conversation. But when I tried to respond, it cut out completely. I touched Rex's collar tag on my keychain, a habit I developed when things got stressful. The metal was warm against my fingers, familiar. It helped me focus. That's when I saw the fire tower through the morning haze. Now I know that tower like the back of my hand. It's perfectly straight, painted Forest Service green, with a ladder that goes up exactly 120 feet. But that morning, looking at it through the mist, it seemed wrong, like it was bending in ways that metal shouldn't bend. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, and it looked normal again. Must be these headaches, I thought. I'd been getting them more and more lately, sometimes with weird vision problems, seeing things that weren't there, or not seeing things that were. The Forest Service doctor said it was stress. Maybe he was right. I decided to climb up to the tower. It was part of my job anyway, checking for fires or lost hikers from up high. Besides, maybe the weird feeling would go away once I got above the tree line. The ladder was slick with morning dew. As I climbed, I noticed something else strange. The deer. We had a whole herd that usually grazed in the meadow visible from the tower. They weren't there. In 3 years, I'd never not seen deer in that meadow in the morning. It was like they were avoiding the whole area. From the top of the tower, I could see the forest spreading out in all directions. Miles and miles of green trees with patches of mist still clinging to the valleys. It was beautiful, peaceful. The kind of view that usually made all my worries disappear, but not that morning. Because as I stood there, looking out over my forest, I could swear the trees were moving, not swaying in the wind. There wasn't any wind, but shifting like something massive was walking through them, staying just out of sight. I grabbed my binoculars, tried to focus on the movement, but every time I got close to seeing something, it would stop. Like whatever it was knew I was watching. That's when I noticed my compass. The needle was spinning in slow circles, like it couldn't find north. Electronics had been acting weird. Lately, batteries draining too fast, radios picking up static instead of voices. But a compass? That was just a magnet and a needle. What could make that stop working? I climbed back down from the tower, my hands shaking a little on the ladder rungs. As my feet hit the ground, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Some of the trail markers, these little orange flags we used to mark safe paths, had been moved, not blown by wind or knocked down by animals. They'd been carefully taken off their posts and arranged in a pattern on the ground. A circle, with lines radiating out from the center, like a child's drawing of the sun, or like something trying to communicate. I stood there for a long moment, Rex's tag clutched tight in my fist, wondering what in God's name was happening in my forest. I should have reported what I saw that morning, should have gone straight back to the station and filed an incident report. But what would I say? "Hey, boss, the trees are moving and something's playing with our trail markers." They'd think I'd lost my mind, so I kept investigating on my own. Over the next few days, I started keeping detailed notes. That's what we did in search and rescue. Document everything: time, location, weather conditions. My notebook started filling up with weird stuff that I couldn't explain. October 12th, 3:47 p.m. Found a circle of dead plants near Miller's Creek. Everything inside the circle, brown and withered. Everything outside, perfectly healthy. In the center, this weird crystalline stuff like salt, but different, glittery. When I touched it with my pen, it made my hand tingle. October 13th, 11:15 a.m. My radio died again in Section 7. Fresh batteries, but completely dead. Worked fine once I got back to Section 6. It's like something in that area just sucks the power out of electronics. October 14th, 2:30 p.m. More broken branches. Same height as before, about 7 feet. But this time they were arranged on the ground. At first, I thought the wind had blown them into a pile. Then I realized they were forming a shape, like a stick figure person, but wrong. The proportions were all off. Arms too long, legs too short, and where the head should be, just a circle of twigs. I started mapping where all these things happened. Guess what? There was a pattern. All the weird stuff was happening in the oldest parts of the forest, where the trees were hundreds of years old, these ancient groves that the locals used to tell stories about. My supervisor, Janet, noticed I was spending a lot of time in those sections. "Everything okay, Victor?" she asked one morning. "You've been putting in a lot of overtime." "Just checking on some storm damage," I said. I wanted to tell her the truth, but the words wouldn't come. "How do you explain that you think something's living in the forest, something that isn't quite natural?" That afternoon, I went back to Section 7, where all the electronics died. I brought 3 different compasses with me. The minute I crossed into that area, all 3 started spinning. Not fast, but slow, deliberate circles, like they were searching for something they couldn't find. Then I heard it, my own voice coming from my radio. "Testing 1, 2, 3. This is Ranger Nakamura." Those were words I'd said yesterday during a radio check, but my radio was off. I checked it twice. The battery compartment was open, batteries on the ground next to me. So how was it playing my voice? "Testing 1, 2, 3. This is Ranger Nakamura." The same words, but something was off. The tone was perfect, the accent was right, but there was something mechanical about it. Like someone had recorded me and was playing it back, trying to get the sound just right. I grabbed my equipment and got out of there fast. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my notebook, but I had to write this down, had to document it. October 15th, 4:15 p.m. Something in Section 7 can mimic voices. Played back my radio check from yesterday. No power source visible. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those stick figures made of branches, the spinning compasses, my own voice coming from a dead radio. I got up around 2 a.m. and spread my maps out on the kitchen table. I'd been marking each incident with a red pin. Looking at them all together, they formed a shape, like a constellation or a map. The pins weren't random. They were leading somewhere, all pointing toward the deepest, oldest part of the forest. A section we called the Devil's Cathedral because of how the ancient trees formed a natural archway. I'd been avoiding that area without realizing it. Every time I planned to patrol there, something would come up. Another task, an emergency call, equipment problems, like my subconscious knew something my conscious mind didn't want to admit. The next morning, I decided to face whatever was in the Devil's Cathedral. I packed extra batteries, 2 radios, multiple compasses, and my camera. If I was going crazy, I wanted proof. One way or another, I needed to know what was happening in my forest. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Maybe that was stupid. In search and rescue, we had a saying, "Never go alone." But this felt personal now. Whatever was out there, it was playing games with me specifically, using my voice, leaving messages I was meant to find. I signed out for a routine patrol and headed into the woods. The morning was clear and cold, the kind where your breath makes little clouds, perfect visibility, no fog to play tricks on your eyes. But as I got closer to the Devil's Cathedral, that familiar fog started rolling in. Not normal morning mist. This came from nowhere, getting thicker with each step. By the time I reached the ancient trees, I could barely see 20 feet ahead. That's when things got really strange. The fog in the Devil's Cathedral was different from normal mist. It moved wrong, swirling in patterns that didn't match the wind, and it was cold. Not regular October cold, but the kind of cold that goes right through your clothes and settles in your bones. I checked my compass. Spinning, just like I expected. My radio was already crackling with static, but I kept walking deeper into the grove, my boots crunching on fallen leaves. That's when I saw him, or it. I still don't know what to call what I saw that day. At first, I thought it was another ranger. The figure was about 50 yards away, standing between two massive pine trees, wearing what looked like a Forest Service uniform. But something was off. The way it stood was too straight, too still. No human stands that perfectly motionless. "Hello?" I called out. "This is Ranger Nakamura. Do you need assistance?" The figure turned toward me and my stomach dropped. It was like watching a bad video recording of a person moving, jerky, unnatural. And its face was mine, not similar to mine, not kind of like mine. It was exactly my face, like looking in a mirror, same scar above my left eyebrow from a climbing accident. Same slightly crooked nose, even the same day's stubble on my chin, but the eyes were wrong. They were too bright, almost glowing in the fog. And they didn't blink. Not once. The thing opened its mouth and my own voice came out. "Testing, 1, 2, 3. This is Ranger Nakamura," the same phrase from my radio. But now I could see where it was coming from. This thing was speaking with my voice, but its mouth movements didn't match the words, like a badly dubbed movie. I took a step back. The thing took a step forward. I noticed its uniform was perfect except for one detail. The ranger badge was on the wrong side. "What are you?" I managed to whisper. It tilted its head, studying me like I was some kind of interesting bug. Then it spoke again, but this time it wasn't using recordings. It was forming new words, still in my voice. "What are you?" The way it said it, breaking the words apart like it was tasting each one, made my skin crawl. I reached for my radio, thinking I should call for backup. But before I could grab it, the thing moved. I don't mean it walked. It shifted. 1 second it was 50 yards away. The next it was right in front of me. Not running, not jumping, just suddenly there, like a film with frames missing, up close. I could see it wasn't quite solid. Parts of it seemed to fade in and out, like a bad TV signal. And behind the perfect copy of my face, I could sometimes see something else, something that hurt my eyes to look at. "You observe," it said, still, using my voice but getting better at it, more natural. "We observe too." "We?" I asked, my mouth dry as sandpaper. That's when I noticed them, more figures in the fog. Some looked human. I recognized faces from town, other rangers, even my mail carrier. But they all had those wrong eyes, and they all moved with that same jerky, unnatural motion. "We learn," the thing wearing my face said. "You document. We document too." It raised its hand, my hand, and pointed at my notebook, then at my camera, then at my own eyes. "You. Watch, Forrest, we watch. You." The other figures were getting closer, a dozen, maybe more, all studying me with those bright, unblinking eyes. I could hear them whispering, practicing human words like kids learning a new language. "Hello. How are you? Nice weather today. Testing 1, 2, 3. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to stay calm. In search and rescue, panic gets you killed. I needed to think. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you watching us?" The thing that looked like me tilted its head again. You came to forest. Forest was ours. Now we share. Must understand. It reached out toward my face. Its hand looked solid, but felt like static electricity when it got close. To my skin, not quite touching, but making all the hair on my neck stand up. Your structure, it said, fascinated. How you remain stable, one form, always one form. How? I realized then what I was dealing with. These weren't creatures, pretending to be human. They were something else entirely, something that could change shape, and they were confused by us, by our fixed forms, our solid bodies. They were studying us like we study animals in the wild, taking notes, learning our patterns, and they'd been doing it for who knows how long. One of the other figures, wearing the face of a hiker who'd gone missing last year, stepped forward. "We practice," it said in the missing man's voice, "but difficult, your shapes, strange, your words, linear." Linear. That word stuck in my brain. These things didn't think in straight lines like we did. They existed differently, moved differently, maybe even experienced time differently. The stick figures, I said, understanding dawning. "You were trying to show us, trying to communicate." My double nodded, a gesture it had clearly practiced. "Bridges," it said, "between your structure and ours. But you break them, call them debris." All those arranged branches weren't random. They were attempts at communication, and we'd been cleaning them up like trail litter. The fog was getting thicker. The figures were pressing closer. I could feel their curiosity like a physical force. They wanted to understand, to learn, to become better at being us. But something was going wrong. I could see it in their movements getting more erratic, hear it in their voices starting to distort. Whatever let them take human form, it wasn't stable. Time. Limited, my double said, its shape beginning to flicker. This form, difficult, energy, high. The others were having the same problem. Their human shapes were breaking down, revealing glimpses of something underneath. Something my brain couldn't quite process, like looking at a color that doesn't exist or a shape with too many dimensions. Must learn faster, my double said, urgency creeping into its stolen voice. Before too late. Too late for what? I asked. But the thing wearing my face was already losing cohesion, its features sliding like melted wax. The last thing it said, in a voice that was no longer quite mine, "Before you destroy everything." The figures were dissolving now, their human shapes falling apart like wet clay. But they weren't disappearing. They were changing into something else, something that made my eyes water just looking at it. Lights. That's the closest I can come to describing what I saw. Shifting patterns of light that moved through the trees, sometimes visible, sometimes not. Like Aurora Borealis had come down to Earth and was dancing between the pines. But these lights had intelligence, purpose. They swirled around me, through me, examining every inch. I felt them in my mind, not reading thoughts exactly, but learning, absorbing how humans work from the inside out. Then, as suddenly as it began, they pulled back. The lights gathered into a cluster about 30 feet away, pulsing with different colors, and somehow, without words, they communicated one last message. "We will try again. We must understand before the burning comes." The burning. Those words echoed in my head as the lights faded into the fog. What burning? What were they afraid of? I stood there in the Devil's Cathedral, shaking like a leaf, trying to process what had happened. My compass was working again. My radio crackled to life. With normal Forest Service chatter, even the fog was lifting, revealing a perfectly ordinary grove of ancient trees. but ordinary was the last thing this place was. I practically ran back to my truck, my mind racing. I needed to tell someone. But who? And what would I say? Hey, there are beings made of light living in our forest, and they're trying to learn how to be human. Instead, I went home and started writing. Everything I'd seen, everything they'd said. By morning, I had 30 pages of notes, maps, sketches, theories. The next few weeks were the strangest of my life. I kept doing my job, but now I was looking for them. The flesh gates, as I started calling them in my notes, they were everywhere once you knew what to look for. A hiker would wave at me on the trail, but their shadow would move wrong. A voice on my radio would have just a hint of that mechanical quality. Birds would fly in patterns that spelled out words, simple ones like hello or watch or learn. They were getting better at mimicking us. Fast. I started leaving them messages too, simple stick arrangements that meant I see you or peace in the basic symbol language we were developing. They always responded, usually within hours. Sometimes with symbols, sometimes by rearranging rocks or leaves into letters. We were learning to communicate. It should have been the scientific discovery of the century, but something was wrong. The animals knew it first. By November, almost all the large mammals had left the forest. Deer, bears, even the raccoons, gone. The birds stopped singing. The insects disappeared. The forest was becoming a silent, empty place, and the flesh gates were getting desperate. Their attempts at human form lasted longer now, but they were glitchy, like a computer trying to run a program it couldn't quite handle. I'd meet what looked like a fellow ranger, have a normal conversation, then watch their face twitch and reform into someone else's mid-sentence. Time running out, they kept saying. The burning is soon. I finally worked up the courage to ask directly, what burning? What's coming? The answer came from a flesh gate wearing the shape of a little girl who'd gone missing in the forest. 20 years ago. She looked up at me with those two bright eyes and said, "You're kind. They know we here now. They prepare the cleansing. Fire from sky, make forest empty, make us gone." My blood ran cold. The military. Someone had figured out what was in the forest, and they were planning to destroy it, burn it all to contain whatever the flesh gates really were. When? I asked. Soon. Days, maybe hours. We try, take your form permanent, escape, survive, but... She flickered, her form unstable. But cannot hold. Your structure too different. That's when I understood. They weren't trying to replace us or infiltrate society. They were refugees. Their dimension, their reality, whatever they called home, it was connected to this forest. And when the military burned it, they'd have nowhere to go. There has to be another way, I said. The little girl's shape smiled sadly. You, different. You see us, not afraid. Most humans, she gestured at the empty forest. Fear. Report. Bring burning, she was right. Someone had reported the strange happenings, maybe hikers who'd seen too much, maybe other rangers who weren't as willing to understand. And now the government was coming to solve the problem the only way they knew how. With fire. I can help, I said. I can tell them you're not dangerous, that we can learn from each other. But even as I said it, I knew it was hopeless. The military doesn't negotiate with unknown entities. They eliminate threats, and to them, the flesh gates were the ultimate threat, beings that could look like anyone, be anyone. The little girl's form was failing. I could see the light underneath, pulsing frantically. You must go, she said. Document, remember, tell the truth. Some will believe. I'm not leaving, I said, but I didn't have a choice. The next morning, my supervisor called me in. The forest was being closed, all personnel evacuated. Official reason, uncontrolled wildfire risk. I knew better. I could already hear the helicopters in the distance. I had one day to gather my notes, my evidence, everything I'd documented. One day before they burned it all, but the flesh gates had one last message for me, and it would change everything. That last day, I went back to the Devil's Cathedral one more time. I had to. Something told me they'd be waiting. They were, not in human form this time. They appeared as they really were. Beings of light and energy, shifting between shapes that my eyes couldn't quite focus on. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all gathered in the ancient grove, and they were building something. In the center of the grove stood a structure made of light itself. It looked like a tower, but one that existed in more dimensions than our world has. Parts of it seemed to fade in and out of reality, and looking at it too long made my head hurt. Victor Nakamura. My name came from everywhere at once. Not from one being, but from all of them together. You asked how to help. This is how. The light beings parted, creating a path to the tower. As I walked closer, I could feel it humming with energy. Not electrical, but something else. Something alive. We cannot stay in your form, they said, but we can preserve our knowledge, our memory, our story. The tower pulsed, and suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a structure, it was a recording device. A way to save everything they were, everything they knew before the burning came. We need someone to carry it. Someone who can survive in your world. Someone who has seen both sides. They meant me. The military's coming, I said. They'll be here in hours. Yes, the fire will come. This forest will burn, but knowledge can escape fire. The tower shifted, contracted, became something smaller. A crystal, about the size of my palm, glowing with that same inner light. Take it. When the time is right, others will find you. Others who can understand. The knowledge will survive. I reached out, hesitant. The crystal was warm, almost alive. The moment I touched it, images flooded my mind. Not my memories, theirs, a world of pure energy, beings of light dancing between stars, a disaster, their reality collapsing, folding in on itself, desperate escape through cracks between dimensions, finding Earth, finding this forest, trying to understand these strange, solid creatures who couldn't change their shapes, trying to communicate, trying to survive. We're not so different, I whispered. No, they agreed. We are all trying to exist, to understand, to continue. The sound of helicopters grew louder. Military helicopters, heavy ones, the kind that carry things meant to burn. Go. Now, the being said, remember us. Tell our story. Help others understand. There is more to reality than what human eyes can see. I ran. Behind me I could feel the light beings preparing for what was coming. Not to fight, they weren't fighters, but to face their end with dignity. I made it. To the edge of the forest, just as the first helicopters appeared overhead. Black ones, unmarked. They dropped something, not regular fire, but something chemical. Something that burned white hot, designed to destroy everything, leave no evidence. The ancient trees went up like matchsticks. The fire spread faster than any natural flame, turning the forest into an inferno in minutes. And somewhere in that blaze, beings from another dimension died because humans couldn't understand them. But I had their crystal, their memory. The government blamed the fire on a lightning strike, closed the area for reforestation, put up signs about dangerous conditions, toxic soil, anything to keep people away. They put me on medical leave when I tried to report what I'd seen. Post-traumatic stress, they said. Delusions brought on by survivors' guilt. They had pills for that. I took early retirement instead. Now I travel. I give talks at small venues, conspiracy conventions, paranormal meetups, anywhere people might listen. Most think I'm crazy, but every once in a while someone stays after. Someone who's seen something they can't explain. Someone who's ready to believe. I show them the crystal. It doesn't glow anymore, not like it did. But sometimes, if the person is right, if they're open enough, they see something in it. A flash of light, an image, a memory that isn't theirs. And the knowledge spreads, slowly, carefully, person by person, because that's what they wanted. Not to invade, not to replace us, just to be remembered. to have their existence, however brief in our world, mean something. They failed to hold our form, failed to survive in our dimension, but their story survives. In every person who listens, in every mind that opens to the possibility that we're not alone, not the only intelligence in a vast, strange universe. The pines are gone now, burned to ash and bulldozed. Flat, but I remember when they had eyes, and now so do you.